As was public notice today, Mr. Watson is attending electronically this evening due to illness. And Mr. Watson, are you here? Can you hear me? I wanted to take just a moment to congratulate all of the Teachers of the Year celebrated last night at the Knoxville Convention Center. It was wonderful to see so many amazing educators. Knox County is certainly blessed, and a special shout out to our Knox County Educators of the Year. Just go on record and say 2 of them were from South Knoxville. Just want to go on the record and say that. Board members, you received an email yesterday, but I just wanted to note that the caption on agenda item 10B was updated to more accurately describe the term and cost associated with this contract with Aspire HR. Also, the order of items 11B and 11C was switched per Mr. Watson's request at the work session. Are there any other requested changes to the agenda? Do we have a motion to approve? So a motion by Ms. Babb, a second by Ms. Satterfield. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. So Superintendent Thomas, I think we have a special recognition.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair and board members. I do appreciate a chance to recognize one of our outstanding principals this evening. Tammy Campbell is a graduate of Austin East Magnet High, and last summer became the school's principal. Prior to that appointment, she had served as the KCS Ombudsman since 2017 and was the first person to serve in that important role. Last month, Ms. Campbell was recognized by the Martin Luther King Jr. Commemorative Commission and received the Education Award at the Commission's Leadership Luncheon. Ms. Campbell played an important role on our district leadership team and was well known at the central office for her wisdom and judgment. In her new role, she has done tremendous work at Austin East during a very challenging time and has been an effective and determined leader for that school community. On a personal note, Tammy, I do want to say that your professionalism and optimistic spirit are greatly missed by all of us at the central office, but I could not be more proud of the work you're doing for the Roadrunner family. I cannot think of anyone more deserving of this recognition, so please join me in congratulating Ms. Tammy Campbell.
Board members, Mr. Watson is requesting everyone speak really loud into their mics because he is having difficulty hearing tonight. All right, so moving to our regular agenda items. Ms. Satterfield, yes.
Item 6, presentation and approval of superintendent finalists, interview questions, and interview schedule.
Yeah, motion to approve.
Okay, so a motion by Ms. Satterfield, a second by Ms. Babb. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Ms. Satterfield?
Thank you so much. Yes, so we have our hiring firm, Dr. Tammy Grissom here today to present the candidates and do the presentation. And then we also have the opportunity to ask questions, additional questions or whatnot. And then after that, I will make a motion to kind of move forward with the process from what we discussed last week. So the podium is yours.
Thank you very much. If I could, Terry, if you don't mind to pass out the notebooks, please. I'm going to do like I do in classrooms. I'm going to get straight to the finalists because I know you're going to be thumbing through the books to look at the finalists, and then we'll come back and talk about the interview and the process if that's good with everyone. While Terry's passing those out, we do have 2 extra copies for the media, so you'll have a copy of it as well. We had a total of 18 applicants for the position here. 3 of those applicants withdrew, and 1 got a job in Florida, and the other 2 just withdrew, did not indicate their reasons why. But that's the update on those candidates. When you receive your notebook, we're going to go to straight to tab 1. That'll be our first finalist that I will present to you. Our job as the search firm was to screen all applicants and to find the candidates that best met the criteria that this board adopted. Has everyone got their notebook? Okay, let's go to tab 1. The first finalist is Dr. Linda Cash. She is currently the superintendent of Bradley County Schools, and she has been since 2015. That district has around 9,400 students. She has been the assistant superintendent of Robertson County from 2013 to 2015. That's about a 14,000 student district. She was the assistant dean of graduate education with Union University from 2012 to 2013. Former elementary principal in Sumner County, which is about 28,000 students, from 2003 to 2012. Former assistant principal in Sumner County from 2002 to 2003. And Dr. Cash has 18 years as a teacher in various states. You will find behind tab 1, Dr. Cash's cover letter, resume, and references. All the other items in the application I have given to your chairman. I've given all the applications to the chairman, so any of you that would like to look at those, your chairman, I gave those to Terry, and I think she gave those, correct, to the chairman. Okay, so Dr. Linda Cash. Tab 2, Dr. John Reiswick. He's currently your assistant superintendent and chief academic officer and has been since 2017. He's the former director of Emerald Academy from 2014 to 2016. Former Director of Innovation and School Improvement for Knox County Schools from 2013 to 2014. Former Supervisor of Secondary Education with Knox County Schools from 2012 to 2013. Former Executive Principal with Knox County from 2008 to 2012. Former Assistant Principal in Knox County from 2004 to 2008. And Dr. Reiswick has 6 years' experience as a teacher. You will find his information behind tab 2. Candidate number 3 is behind tab 3, Mr. Kirk Schrum. He's currently the Chief School Leadership with Henry County Schools, Georgia, and has been since 2019. This school district has 43,000 students. He's the former area executive director with Fulton County Schools in Atlanta, Georgia, which has around 94,000 students, and he was in that position from 2013 to 2019. He was the former principal in Fulton County Schools, Georgia, from 2011 to 2013. Former principal in Hamilton County Schools in Tennessee from 2006 to 2011. That district has around 43,000 students. He was former assistant principal in Hamilton County Schools from 2003 to 2006. and he has 9 years' experience as a teacher. Mr. Kirk Schrum. Madam Chairman, I don't know if you all want to vote to accept those finalists at this point, or do you want me to review the other items in the notebook?
I move that we accept the 3 candidates provided from our search firm to move forward with the candidate search.
So we have a motion by Ms. Satterfield, a second by Ms. Horn. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. I had included, I know the search committee came up with the interview schedule for our candidates, and I placed in page 38 and 39, but I know you all have updated that schedule. So, Madam Chairman, I don't know if you want the search committee to review that schedule at this time?
So yes, we have the same schedule as here on your desk. There weren't any changes from the discussion that we had Monday. Did anything come up within these last 48 hours that we need to look at or change from the schedule? I move that we adopt the recommended schedule from the search committee for the candidate interview on February 17th and 18th of 2022.
Second.
So we have a motion by Ms. Satterfield and a second by
Second.
Ms. Babb. Any discussion on that? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Madam Chairman, I would ask if you or someone would call these finalists either tonight or first thing in the morning, obviously to congratulate them on being a finalist, but to go over the schedule, work out their travel plans, and if they need hotel accommodations for those that are out of town. If you could please turn to page 30 in your notebooks. We provided some things I think would be very useful for you as a board to review prior to interviewing. They're just some interviewing tips for you. And then starting on page 35, there's equal opportunity employment guidelines, and I strongly suggest you read those. There's certain questions you cannot ask during an interview, and if you could review those before your interviews begin on February the 17th. And then on page 40, during the interviews, I think it would be good for you to have copies of this candidate reaction form for those that are in the audience that are observing, that they can make their comments about each candidate. I think it's good for the board just to, hear what the public thinks about each of your candidates, so you could have that form available during your interviews, which are conducted in an open meeting. I think I'll turn it over to the chairman or the search committee. We had provided you with a sample interview guide, and I'll turn it over to the search committee to let the board know what you all have decided to do with those questions, and I think you may have some of your own, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I had one question from Dr. Grissom. When you're talking about, I'm looking on page 40, about this candidate reaction form, I think the way you said it was kind of when we did the community forum, this was for community members to fill it out. Are you then suggesting there's a way that these get back to us? I guess that's the part I was asking.
Just turn it back to the board, and if the board wants to look through those, just to
Okay.
get, it's nothing you need to tabulate.
Okay.
It's just strictly just to get a feel of what people are thinking. Ultimately, it's your decision, but it's found to be useful that
Okay.
just to get a feel of how people reacted to each of the.
Okay,
the
so
fin-
kind of have these available at the community forum. People who want to fill them out can. And
Yeah,
then
if they
we can-
don't, it's okay, but you don't need to have your board secretary or anybody tabulate them. Just have them available for the board to look through.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I guess I have one other question. I mean, obviously, we've been handed a ton of information about these people. Do you feel like on the tabs 1, 2, and 3, the suggestion is we go back and look at these, and this will give us a good idea about the candidates looking through this pre them coming in?
Absolutely, and you need to review their
Okay.
information prior to the interviews.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I make a motion that the candidates will have the sample interview questions to create a 20-minute presentation, as well as, yeah. I don't know. How to do this. Can I just do it all at once, or should I break it down? Okay. I make a motion that the candidates have the sample interview questions provided by Tennessee School Board Association to create a 20-minute presentation for their interview.
So would you like for us to email the finalists the interview guide that we created?
Yes, and
Okay.
have them create a 20-minute presentation answering those questions.
And I'll do that, but when the chairman or someone calls them, you need to review all that with them so they'll be prepared for their interview day.
We can send that.
Huh?
We could do that. Would it be easier if we send it when we call them?
Either way, you have it, Terry has it, yeah.
Yes, and Madam Chair, sorry, board members, what you have in front of you is TSBA's sample interview guide with some edits that Mr. Watson suggested. So you may want to look at his red line revisions to see if you want to accept those along with the sample.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion by Ms. Satterfield and a second, have a second?
Betsy.
By Ms. Sanderson and Ms. Horn, did you?
Well, that's what I have, I just want to know what you guys are proposing, because we
I
have two
removed
different
the-
things here.
Yeah, I removed the motion.
Can we have a second to look over this?
Yes,
Yeah.
to look over this, yeah. Take the motion off the floor.
I think it might be good if you all, the search committee, maybe review the interviews the 17th and 18th with the board, how that day's gonna look. I think might be good. Think that would be good? Have they seen it? Oh, you've already talked about it. Well, good job. Then we can move right along.
Right, everyone was good on that.
Okay, good.
So what we're reviewing right now, board members, is the updated sample interview guide with the recommendations from Board Member Watson.
Ms. Horn?
Well, I make a motion that we accept what Dr. Grissom is presenting with this packet in our notebook.
So you were recommending, just to be clear,
The original
the original version
Correct.
of what Dr. Grissom, and so there's a motion on the
So
floor.
not this.
Correct. The one that's in the notebook that that we looked at on Monday.
And there's also another copy in the notebook as well, tonight. In the side pocket, yeah.
So we have a motion on the floor by Ms. Horn to accept the original. Daniel, yes. So we have the motion by Ms. Horn and a second by Ms. Bounds. And Mr. Watson, did you?
What, can somebody repeat the motion? I'm not hearing it. I don't know if Terry can state it. I don't know which mic we're using.
Yes, Mr. Watson, the motion was made by Ms. Horn to accept the original version of the TSBA interview guide for the candidate's 20-minute presentation.
So what is the second version that you're referencing?
So we had a copy of the red line revisions that you had
Okay,
made for
that
Dr.
wasn't necessarily
Grissom.
meant for approval. That was just simply some wordsmithing suggestions. I was not intending to bring that for a vote, so.
Oh, okay.
I think the original. Because we looked at it, we've already reviewed it, and that's what we had.
Ms. Bounds?
Yeah, I just think there needs to be some clarification when we talk to these candidates about 20 minutes, like, are we expecting them just to speak to us? Are we expecting a PowerPoint presentation? I think just some guidance so that all three have very clear parameters and are coming in under the same kind of guidelines of what our expectation is on this. Because I think just saying we want 20-minute presentation is a little vague.
Yeah, so I had a conversation with Dr. Grissom, and we will also call the candidates. With the conversation that I had with Dr. Grissom to tell the candidates is that they will have 20 minutes to present the answers to these questions. And so we will not engage during those 20 minutes, and that their presentation should have us flowing from criteria 1, criteria 2, criteria 3, and we will be able to answer as they present. So my expectation is when they're presenting, that they will be able to walk us through these questions.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure we kind of gave them some clarity on what our expectation was.
So when you all call them in the morning, you need to explain that.
Taking notes.
That concludes my report, unless someone has some questions for me.
We have,
Oh, so we need to vote on this. So,
All right.
so we have a motion on the floor by Ms. Horn, a second by Ms. Bounds to accept these, the original. And any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay. All right, so motion carries.
I move that Knox County Schools Director of I move that Knox County Schools Director of Human Resources, Scott Bolton, develops interview questions for the superintendent candidate interview on February 18th. Scott Bolton will also assign interview questions to each board member. This is for the process of live interview questioning.
So we have a motion by Ms. Satterfield and a second by Mr. McMillan. Any discussion on that? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Dr. Grissom. Thank you so much for the hard work that you presented with us. And we'll keep holding you until February 22nd, okay?
Good luck. Call if you need me.
Thank you. Okay. What's next on there? Yep, we're ready. Ms. Coatney?
Item 7, consent agenda.
Do we have a motion to approve?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Do we have a second? To approve the consent agenda. Ms. Horn? Ms. Satterfield? Okay, a motion by Ms. Babb, a second by Ms. Satterfield. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
8A, approve first reading of Knox County Board of Education Policy A100, School District, School Board Legal Status and Authority as amended.
So moved.
So motion by Ms. Owen, a second by Mr. Watson. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
8B, approve first reading of Knox County Board of Education Policy C121, Director of Schools, Qualifications and Selection as amended.
So motion by Ms. Owen, a second by Ms. Horn. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
8C, approve first reading of Knox County Board of Education Policy C123, Director of School Duties as amended.
Motion by Ms. Owen, a second by Ms. Satterfield. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
8D, approve first reading of Knox County Board of Education Policy J110, Equal Educational Opportunities as amended.
Motion by Ms. Owen, a second by Ms. Satterfield. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
8E, approve first reading of Knox County Board of Education Policy J193, Student Suspension as amended.
Motion by Ms. Owen. We have a second? Second by Ms. Bounds. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries.
8F, approve first reading of new Knox County Board of Education Policy C260, Equity in Education.
I'd like to make a motion to send this policy back to policy review.
So a motion by Ms. Owen, a second by Ms. Satterfield.
I'd like to make a friendly amendment to the motion.
Okay, Mr. Watson.
I would like to make that we would send it back to our March policy review meeting and identify a particular meeting. The reason I'm suggesting this is I know that we've talked about the superintendent and his retirement and us bringing in a new leader. We also need to remember that by mid-year, we're also going to have at least 3 new board members. And depending on what happens with elections, that could change even beyond that. Not saying that anybody wants to see that happen, but we know at least 3 of our board members have opted not to run again. And so I think it's important for this particular group to take this effort up and that it not be moved out beyond that.
So I'll revise the motion to say, I'd like to move policy C260, equity in education, to be reviewed in the March policy review meeting.
So a motion by Ms. Owen and a second by Ms. Satterfield. So, and we do have public forum on this. Ms. Kelly, do we have a date on the calendar for that?
Yes, ma'am, it's March 23rd at 1:30.
Okay. Ms. Horn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. After I listened to the speakers the other night, I kept hearing people talk about all students, and I was thinking about the fact that so many of our policies say all students and, in fact, specify a listing of students. So just in going through this proposed policy, there are, I think the issue is that, as Ms. Owen raised the question the other night about unintended consequences and just some of the issues, I believe, are that we have specific policies that speak to most every single part of this policy. So I think that's an issue with this policy. It's trying to put, I literally have gone through, it's trying to put a lot of different policies and kind of summarize these policies. And I feel like that's where we could end up with unintended consequences. So for instance, policy I-270 is directly spoken to in the very first opening paragraph. In lines 10 through 13, we have J100, J110, J210 to 11, J460, J330, J370, J430, I100, I150, I160 that all speak to directly to that. Lines 15 through 25, roughly, that paragraph, we have I-290, we have, which is an ELL service policy. We also have our Welcome Center that we fund. We have C100, D100, I-190. We have I-370. We have I-432. I think you can look at what our spending is, our budget by district to see that there are variations in what is spent as far as our resources. And then I think if you look at the 7 things that are listed, decreasing absenteeism, that's J120. Reducing suspension rates and expulsion rates, J191 and 193, we've talked about extensively with regard to those. 3, that's addressed by the Ford Next Generation project. The next one is addressed by I-290. The next one is addressed by G290, G300, G260, G270. The 6th one is addressed in the strategic plan. The 7th one has been addressed in the DEO, now with a new name, Alliance name. So I think that's the issue, and I think that's why there are so many questions, because you're trying to take all these policies and put them into one policy where we have a plethora of policies that lays this out, because this is throughout all of these policies. So I think that's the issue with it. So honestly, I'm not sure we need a policy, because we have this in all these policies that I've noted. So I think that we should probably just go ahead and vote on this, because we have this in all of these policies. And I'm happy to send, this is like just my chicken scratch handwriting, but I'm happy to send an email with, what I have so that everybody can see it. And this, I didn't read through policy. I mean, I did a, pretty quick little overview. This was not an extensive Search. So there's probably more that I don't have on my list. I know Ms. Owen noted the fact that we have, there were probably 7 or 8 or 9 policies that specifically speak to equity. So I feel like we're trying to take an issue and put it into one policy that's going to then create more work for the staff to try to get all this into one policy when we have it throughout our entire policy manual. So in my opinion, we just need to vote on this, and we can look at these policies and see if there's an issue with some of these policies that you don't feel like it's being addressed.
Ms. Owen?
I'd like to respond, but it's hard for me here to know if I can get the floor or not.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate you offering your notes, and I'll be glad to send mine too. And I think if we can look at all of those policies, one thing that I addressed with some folks in the community who had a concern.
Ms. Owen? I think Mr. Watson's having a hard time hearing. Can
I get any louder?
I don't know.
I can get really loud. If
use your teacher voice?
you don't want that. I think what we're trying to do is we're working a little backward. We're making an umbrella policy to incorporate all of these other things. And I think putting it out to March 23rd, that gives us plenty of time to look at those and see if there are conflicting policies. And I think a reduction in the language would also make it broad enough that we can ensure that it doesn't conflict with those other policies. So I think being able to look at those and reference and make sure that all of the language matches, I think by March 23rd, we can easily do that, and especially with those notes that you've already produced and with the policies, the ones that are specific to equity that I've pulled out, the ones that you've pulled out that say all students, and then we can pull others if other board members have others, and just really make sure that if we are creating this sort of umbrella policy to be sure the community understands our purpose, that it also matches everything that we have.
Mr. Watson?
Yes, first, let me apologize for not being there in person. You all don't want me there. I'm feeling pretty crummy, but, so I appreciate your patience. I'm really only hearing about every other word, so I know I may not be speaking directly to the essence of the conversation, but I did hear a little bit of what Ms. Owen had to say and what Ms. Warren had to say. I do want to remind the board that the superintendent in our policy review meeting on November the 17th took time at the end of that meeting to share that the administration was going to be working toward an equity policy. At that time in that meeting, nobody on the board suggested that we should wait, or it wasn't the right timing, or that we need to do some other things. So I think the superintendent acted in good faith and pursued that, and had, after sharing with the board that was his intent. I'm hearing a little bit about referencing different policies, and I know we have lots of cross references in our policies. Certainly there's more work that needs to be done on the policy, and I think a good place to have a good conversation about this, about the need for it and or how it might work, would be in a policy review meeting. I think based on our conversation on Monday, and also hearing from the community and hearing from several folks on Monday who have been involved in this work for a very long time. I even know that Rosa Marr was there, but I don't think she got to speak. She left early. She's the current co-chair. I think given what we're hearing from the community, it would be worth the board's time to investigate this further in policy review and give it the time that it deserves. Thank you.
Ms. Satterfield?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank you, Board Member Horn, for doing that additional work within the last 48 hours, because I didn't even know that it was infused. And so I think that one speaks to the commitment Knox County Schools has to equity throughout the school system. And I also think that this is a perfect opportunity to not put the labor of searching for where equity is on our community, our parents, that we can just have one policy and reference the different policies for each notion that you pulled out. So one policy versus all these other policies that are found within Knox County Schools I'm not a parent, but if a parent needed to come advocate for something, that they can go to that one particular equity and education policy that is referencing all of the other policies within Knox County Schools. So even if it's just a matter of this policy is combining where equity is infused throughout Knox County Schools, I think that that is a great start to build upon. So we already have the foundation from what you've done. I'm sure Board Member Owens will do a whole bunch more research about what needs to go into a policy in that way. But I do agree that we don't need to overstep the other policies, but I think it's going to be a complete game changer for our community if they're able to access one policy to be able to find the rest of the information that's needed. So I support going back to policy review.
So any more discussion on that?
Madam Chair, I didn't hear if Ms. Owen accepted the friendly amendment or so can you repeat what the motion is?
Yes, Ms. Courtney, do you want to, she did accept it. Can you read?
She did or did not, sorry?
She did.
Yeah, Mr. Watson, the motion was to move policy C-260, equity and education, to be reviewed in the March 23rd policy review meeting.
Thank you.
Mr. McMillan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I tend to agree with what Ms. Horn said. Is that close enough? Can you hear me? Okay, I'm usually too close to it, Virginia. But anyway, I tend to agree with her, and we have all these policies. And I don't think, just to sort of disagree with what you're saying, Ms. Satterfield, I don't think that we need something additional with so many, parts and legs or whatever you want to call it that somebody can go to. If they see something that is discriminatory or in their mind, or where some child is not receiving equal treatment, including the teacher, an equal teacher, and if it involves more money, then we need to take a look at that particular thing. But at this time, I don't think that we need to adopt a policy like this. I tend to think, now this is just my personal opinion, talking to people, but I tend to think that it's, well, we've just thrown it around here Monday night and a little bit tonight and seen how comprehensive it is. How are you going to make that, or is this like A through Z, and you just want to add A, B, and C, and later on come back and add the rest of the alphabet? That's my opinion on it. If you want to vote on it tonight, I'll be glad to vote. Thank you.
Mr. Jen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just something real quick, because I have heard from a few students, and not just at Farragut, but from a variety of schools in the county, that they would support such a policy. Obviously, the details and how this policy would interact with other policies in Knox County, that's not knowledge that I have or really truly understand. But I would hope that perhaps the board might seriously consider this and maybe look at it again in the future, whether or not this board agrees to move forward with it or not. Obviously, I cannot vote, so I can't influence that decision, but just at least for now, taking another look at it, working through the details and seeing if it is something that could be helpful or beneficial to the students of this county, I think that would be a good direction for the board to go in.
Thank you. Ms. Horn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm totally fine with taking it back to policy review. That's fine. I think I'm with Mike. I'm not convinced we need a policy because I think we have all these policies, but we can certainly take it back and talk about it and see if, we can do a listing or whatever. So.
Ms. Satterfield?
So yeah, I think my ask will at least take it back to policy review, and whatever policy comes out of that is what we vote on, and let that be the energy. But I do think that there can be more content provided to what we have that can reach a common goal. And when it comes back to a vote, then I personally would like to see it go back to policy review, see if we can collectively as a board create a policy, because I've been on this board for 4 years and we haven't had a chance to do that. So is there something we can create as a collective board that serves the whole Knox County?
Mr. McMillan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. All I wanted to add, if that's what you want to do, that, I guess that will be fine. I just want to remind board members, and this is, I hope people do not take it the wrong way. Students' opinions are important, but the bottom line is this 9-member board runs the school system, along with whoever the director of schools is. And I think we need to make sure that we keep that in mind without trying to satisfy students and everybody else, because when we get into that area, it just opens up we've got all kinds of students, and you'll be opening up another area. But that's all I wanted to say. Just I wish board members would keep that in mind, that this 9-member board, it ultimately comes down to our decision, and you're not going to make everybody happy. Thank you.
Do we have public forum?
So yes, we have public forum on this topic. First, we have Kristen Smith, and then we'll have Rachel Hudson. Kristen Smith? I'm here. Okay, great, sorry. If you can state your name, county of residence, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. And please speak directly into the mic so Board Member Watson can hear you.
Kristen Smith, Knox County. When I was in 4th grade, my science teacher took us outside and told us we'd be learning about rockets. What she didn't tell us is that to learn about them, we'd be watching the gifted and talented students shoot their rockets, and we would go chase them. Years before, a group of students had been chosen for that experience, and the rest of us watched. Now, imagine this experience happens to a child who just moved to this country. Her parents don't speak English, and she's doing all she can to translate what she's learning. She doesn't have the language to express the hurt she may feel. Students in Knox County speak more than 119 languages. Imagine if this scene unfolded with a child who has sensory learning needs or struggles to regulate emotions, or happens to a child whose caregivers don't have the resources to intervene. In Knox County, more than 25% of residents live below the poverty line. Maybe this child lives with a grandparent doing their best to keep them feeling safe. He infers he doesn't deserve the same experience as the children around him. Imagine him trying to sit for a standardized test, one of many these days, but is discouraged, feeling like he's always behind everyone else. As unfair as this story was to me, I was lucky. I went home and told my parents, and my mom started a rocket club at the YMCA. She understood a basic principle. She didn't just buy me a rocket. She recognized that there was a school full of children in the same spot as me. And she thought, yeah, I can buy rockets for all the kids who live around me. And we can build them together, and we can learn about space. And that's what we did. My parents didn't have a lot of money, but for my mom, buying rockets for the neighborhood was faith in action. And I think there's a lesson for us in that. The dictionary defines equity as fairness or justice in the way that we see that people are treated. When we talk about it, we have to set aside politics. We have to set aside all of the polarization. And we have to recognize that at its core, equity affirms everyone is starting at a different place and meets people where they are to give them what they need to level the field. It recognizes that every human has value, is worth time, attention, and resources, and equity is worth its own policy. This policy affirms that it is our responsibility as a school system to do whatever we can to provide a learning experience where every child, regardless of race, circumstance, identity, or status, has access to the resources that they need to thrive. It affirms our commitment to keep learning, to keep recognizing inequality, and to keep striving to make it right. It takes a village to raise a child. We are their village. and we have a responsibility to do everything in our power to show every child we're valuable. Are there other policies? Of course there are. But this one makes a statement to our entire community that says, hey, this matters. You matter to us, every child of Knox County, and that is the reason it's valuable. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll have Rachel Hudson. Rachel Hudson. State your name, county of residence, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
My name is Rachel Hudson from Knox County. After listening to Monday night's meeting, it's evident to me that so many of you do want equity for your children. And perhaps there is some confusion of what we mean when we use the term equity. The definition of equity is to advocate for fairness and impartial treatment. And I heard many of you speaking about your personal experiences with your child and wanting adequate support for them. And I'd invite you to take that same emotional pull that you feel as a parent and put yourself in the shoes of the immigrant parent who is sending their child to school knowing they can't properly communicate with their classmates and teachers and receiving no interpreter and translation support. Put yourself in the shoes of the parent who knows that their child of color may not be safe at school that day. And put yourself in the shoes of a parent who is economically disadvantaged and knows that in order for their child to have a life free from the stress of poverty, they need a chance at a quality education. Equity looks like meeting dysregulated students who had traumatic evenings or mornings and meeting them with the emotional regulation support they need. It looks like noticing a child with developmental delays and advocating for them to receive assessments to qualify for special needs services. It looks like recognizing a child who's never received formal schooling and doesn't speak English and providing translation support for their families. This proposed equity policy puts the accountability of equitable education in action. It's an acknowledgement that as a school system, we realize that not everyone in our community is starting at the same place. However, it is our responsibility to provide every possible opportunity for them to have an optimal learning experience. And this policy speaks to the frightened parents who are afraid that their child's going to fall through the cracks, and it calms their fears by saying, we see you and your child, and we're going to do our best to advocate and support them. And it speaks to our teachers and staff who are using advocacy and personal resources every day, and it says, as a system, we're going to support you. In a time when all of our children's learning has been disrupted and we're concerned about learning loss, I want to remind you that many of our children have lost more than academic support. And it is going to take a shared commitment and accountability to make sure that the most marginalized students amongst us are not kept on the margins, but cared for by an actual community. Our community's future social and economic viability and progress will be highly contingent on this district's capacities to open doors of opportunity for all, and not just a historically privileged few. Equity means we not only advocate for fair treatment for our own children, but for the needs of our neighbors' children as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Gary Weedman. Gary Weedman. And after Gary, we'll have Denise Bean.
Gary Weedman, Knox County. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I am President Emeritus of Johnson University. I'm here to speak in support of this proposed equity policy. I advocate this policy based on my personal and professional experience with public education. We have 4 sons who attended public schools in the state and went on to get terminal graduate degrees. My wife Janice has a baccalaureate and master's degree from UTK and has taught in public schools for more than 20 years. The Templer School of Education at Johnson has prepared teachers for 30 years, and it is now ably led by Dr. Roy Miller, who has a 36-year history of public schools. We have about 100 graduates teaching in the area. I enthusiastically endorse equity in education, but I realize it's quite a task. Words like diversity, inclusion, equity have strong political overtones used in contexts that many of us and our constituencies find troubling. But they're good words, and we should not concede these good words to troubling political agendas, but rather recapture them for our own purposes. And it can be done. I faced a similar dilemma about words early in my presidency at Johnson University. We wanted to distinguish our school from 2 predominant kinds of private Christian higher education. institutions. And we chose to describe ourselves as a third way. We were not one or the other of the existing ways. We borrowed parts from those, but we were a third way. One of our board members mentioned that Third Way was the name of a leftist think tank in California, and that might not be a good term for us. We had a robust discussion about Third Way and finally decided not to let the left-leaning association own a very good word that was useful in defining who we are for the 21st century. Third Way as a term does not necessarily have political implications. We marketed ourselves as a third-way school, and that set the scene for expansion of academic programs, increased enrollment, and more community involvement. Don't let diversity, inclusion, and equity be barriers to accomplishing what is a right understanding of what they can bring to the Knox County Schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Denise Dean. Denise Dean. All right. Molly Conaway. Molly Conaway. State your name, county your residence, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, thank you. Molly Conaway from Knox County. I'm the lead pastor of a faith community called Crossings that meets here downtown in the Square Room and also at Christenberry Elementary School on Sunday evenings. Our family and our faith community are heavily invested in the community and the schools at Christenberry and at Fulton. I was reflecting this morning about the discussion my husband and I had several years ago when we were trying to decide when would be the appropriate time to have children. Basically, we decided with wisdom around us that there is no convenient time to have children. They will always be a disruption. We will never have enough time or money. Having children is never convenient, but it is always worth it. My understanding is that there's a team of people who have been working on this equity policy for something like 7 years, championing individual cultures, identities, talents, abilities, languages, interests of each student. When will it be convenient to put this work into policy? When there's a new superintendent, when there isn't a pandemic, when your definition of equity is finally perfected, maybe another time or another season. The fact is, equity in education will never be convenient, but it will always be worth it. In 1963, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. wrote a letter from Birmingham jail. The premise of his letter is the same premise for our conversation today. His goal was to warn the people in power that there would never be a convenient time for equality. I'd like to read a couple excerpts from his letter. One of the points in your statement is that our acts are untimely. Some have asked, why didn't you give the new administration time to act? The only answer that I can give to this inquiry is that the new administration must be prodded about as much as the outgoing one before it acts. We will be sadly mistaken if we feel that the election of the new mayor will bring the millennium to Birmingham. Frankly, I have never engaged in a direct action movement that was well-timed, Dr. King said in his letter. For years now, I have heard the word wait. This wait has almost always meant never. We must come to see with the distinguished jurist of yesterday that justice too long delayed is justice denied. And King ended that letter in the same way I'd like to end today. If I have said anything that is an understatement of the truth and is indicative of an unreasonable impatience, I beg you to forgive me. If I have said anything in this that is an overstatement of the truth and is indicative of my having a patience that makes me patient with anything less than brotherhood, I beg God to forgive me. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we'll have Tina Shields. Tina Shields. Okay. That concludes public forum on that agenda item.
So, Ms. Coatney, will you read the motion on the floor once more?
Yes, Ms. Owen's motion was to move policy C-260, equity in education, to be reviewed in the March 23rd policy review meeting, and that motion was seconded by Ms. Satterfield.
Do we need a roll call? So we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 9A, approve ESSER 3.0 Public Plan Federal Relief Spending Addendum and Safe Return to In-Person Instruction and Continuity of Services Plan Addendum.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Babb, a second by Ms. Satterfield. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
9B, approve receipt of Walmart Community Grant in the amount of $1,000 for Bearden Middle School's orchestra program.
So moved.
A motion by Ms. Babb, a second by Ms. Satterfield. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries.
9C, approve receipt of Southern Appalachian Science and Engineering Trust Fund grant in the amount of $1,100 for Career Mountain Academy Science Program.
Motion by Mr. McMillan, a second by Ms. Satterfield. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
9D, approve receipt of a Chlorine Botanical Foundation 2022 Budding Botanist Grant in the amount of $1,000 for Inskip Elementary School's Garden Education Program.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Owen, a second by Ms. Babb. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
9E, approve receipt of a Fidelity Charitable Donor Advised Fund grant in the amount of $500 for Carnes Middle School's orchestra program.
Motion by Ms. Henderson, a second by Ms. Owen. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
10A, approve contract with Skilled Services Quality Construction LLC for the Halls High School exterior upgrades project in the amount of $2,494,000.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Bounds, a second by Ms. Babb. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 10B, approve contract with Aspire HR through a TIPS cooperative contract for provision of digital automation software, Concur, to streamline payables and travel reimbursement process at a cost of $452,441.80 in year one and $115,975.87 per year for years 2 through 5 if renewed, using general purpose fiscal services funds.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Babb, a second by Ms. Owen. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
10C, approve use of Tennessee statewide contract number 70144 for fleet credit card services with FleetCor Technologies Operating Company, LLC, doing business as FleetCor, for the purchase of gasoline and diesel fuel as needed by departments and offices of Knox County Schools.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Babb, a second by Ms. Horn. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
11A, approve fiscal year 2022 general purpose budget line item transfers in the amount of $8,865 for October 1, 2021 through December 31, 2021.
Motion by Ms. Horn, a second by Ms. Satterfield. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
11B, approve increase of $67,870 to amount of fee proposal of Lewis Group Architects for the Halls High School exterior upgrades project.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Bounds, a second by Ms. Babb. Any discussion? Sorry, Patty. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
11C, approve fund balance designation of $700,000 for Halls High School exterior upgrades project.
A motion by Ms. Bounds, a second by Ms. Satterfield. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
11D, approve charter school review committee appointments.
Second.
A motion by Ms. Horn, a second by Ms. Babb. Ms. Satterfield?
Yes, I just want to lift up, I know I had questions I didn't ask last week, but over the last 48 hours I asked. But this is a committee that has to be in place. And so if we prepare for additional charter schools to come in, this is where that committee comes into place. So I want to give that clarity. But I also want to lift up the maybe consider. I looked at the review committee, and it's mostly central office, which I think it's fine, but I also think that if you can get input from school level as well, teachers and principals in some capacity, then I think that that will be helpful because you can get so far removed from the day-to-day work that you might get better insight and input from on the ground too. So not to change the committee, but just do that additional work to get input from people on the ground doing the work.
Ms. Babb?
So do you want, while we're looking to approve this, do you want to move that more people are added to the committee?
No, because I didn't do additional information, didn't do additional research to have that cause, but I just want a good faith effort that people do their due diligence to get as much input as possible when making the decisions for charter schools.
Okay, so we have a motion by Ms. Horn, a second by Ms. Babb. Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 11E, discussion and possible action on defense of the mask mandate.
You want to do public forum? Okay.
So we do have public forum. All right, first we have Andrea Fisher. State your name, county of residence, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Yes, Andrea Feaster of Knox County. Experts don't always know best. I know my child best. Experts and experience should be valued, however, not at the expense of the people and their knowledge. This is a quote from a self-proclaimed social justice advocate who also happens to be one of the plaintiffs in the case. This is my response. Our children have paid an enormous cost in regards to their education, their development, and their health. Their own knowledge tells them this is wrong. Yet, they walk into your schools every single day, the schools that the community pays for, and they mask their beautiful faces, and they diminish their love of learning, all to make just a few feel a little more comfortable. This activist also seems to enjoy at least one of her child's having a private education at a school where masks are optional. Yet our children have to walk into school every day and hide their face. How does this keep her safe? Now the law department gets to go into our schools and take their pictures of our kids to show their compliance. Why aren't we trying to take the pictures of the plaintiffs when they're out with no mask on? Why do our kids have to carry such a burden? Now the plaintiffs want to send people into our schools to monitor. How are we going to pay for that? Maybe let's put them into brown shirts so we know who they are, right? We have done your research for you that you have not done. There is an absolute, or there seems to be an absolute, the judge in this case seems to have been brought out of retirement to preside over this one case. Conflict of interest for a family friend. So anyway, I will end this with asking you all to keep your seats tonight. Do not turn your backs on us tonight, as you did in October. Thank you.
Next, we'll have Christina Flora. State your name, county of residence, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Christine Flora, Knox County. I have 4 children, 3 of which attend Knox County Schools, specifically Hardin Valley Elementary and Hardin Valley Middle School. We have owned our home in Knoxville for exactly 1 year today, this very day. And we officially moved here last June after school was out from Southern California. One of our main reasons for moving here was the freedom that Tennessee provided, particularly the freedom associated with our children and their education and their health. When we first moved here, it was like we had found freedom. My kids were so excited. However, that freedom seemed to be short-lived. I was a school administrator in California during the whole entire COVID pandemic. I saw so many instances of children who were struggling due to the rules in place, particularly the rules regarding mask wearing. I saw a huge increase in issues with speech and language development and social emotional issues. Talk about equity. That's equity. That's an issue. We were told that we would be fined for every student that wasn't wearing their mask properly. And I, being a rule follower, made sure that I told the kids to do that. I took it to heart. Daily, however, it took a toll on me, enough to where I ended my career as a school administrator last June, because I saw what it was doing to so many children. We were told to trust the science, to follow the rules. And I have to admit, there was a lot of uncertainty in the beginning we didn't know. We know now. In the beginning, I was even making teachers change clothes when they arrived at school. Kids spray their shoes. So all these things were finally debunked. We let that go. I could go on and on about recommendations that I took seriously, but I'd rather focus on talking about my children. My children are the main reason I'm speaking today. Our 4 children spent time in California with the masks. My 13-year-old daughter got a mastoid infection twice during this time. The pediatrician believed that was due to mask wearing. My son has epilepsy, an issue that should be taken seriously. He should not be wearing a mask at school. But my youngest daughter is the one I'm the most concerned about. She is withdrawn and sad and not okay at school. A problem that was resolved when we first came here and we didn't have the masks, but guess what? It's back. She's now having to see the school counselor at Hardin Valley every week because she is not developing, she is not growing, she acts like she can't read half the time. So trust the science is something we hear all the time. Yet I believe it's clear now that science doesn't back the wearing of these masks. In fact, recent things that have come out in the news lately show the opposite. Even people from places that are more liberal, more mainstream media, they all say the cloth masks do not work.
Thank you,
Please
Christina.
stop.
Next, we'll have Tina Shields. No, Deborah Howard. Deborah Howard. Deborah Howard, sorry about that. State your name, county of residence, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Okay. I'm Deb Howard, Knox County. All right, I would rather be doing anything than standing here again in front of you all, but I'm compelled to speak regarding the lawsuit, mass, and the daily harm being inflicted on the 60,000 other students in Knox County Schools, including my own. Does Knox County Schools not have the right to face their accuser? So we have these, parents in the lawsuit not known to the Knox County Schools. They know that what they're doing is wrong, these parents do, and not about health, or they would be proud of their actions, and they would want to be known. The answers to a few questions would also prove this to be true. So 3 questions. Did the children of these parents attend school prior to the beginning of the pandemic during flu season? Did their children attend school during any of the 7 to 8 wonderful weeks that our kids had without masks at the beginning of this school year?
Ms. Howard?
Yes?
Can you talk a little closer to the mic?
Oh, can't hear me? Oh, thought I was being really
Sorry.
loud.
I can hear you. Mr. Watson can't hear you.
Okay. Did their children attend school during any of the 7 to 8 weeks at the beginning of this school year when all the kids were rightly free-faced and free-breathing and happy? Do these parents take their children anywhere that there is not a mask mandate? To the grocery, to shop, almost anywhere in Knox County. There is no mask mandate in place in Knox County. So if, there were no masks prior to COVID. There was very little mask wearing at the beginning of this school year. And there's no mask mandate here in Knox County. If the answer to any of these questions is yes, then we know this lawsuit has nothing to do with health. There is information that shows it is not only not about health, but most assuredly is about politics and money when you factor in the fact that Democracy Forward, the Hillary Clinton front group, has funded the lawsuit. So, as it seems, the law director is waiting for you to act, and I know many of you have tried to be on the side of the parents, but please push for the magistrate to issue a scheduling order for the case. Something else I would like to just share is I have multiple friends who are much younger than I am who have kids that are going to be entering school soon, and I am warning them off of going to Knox County Schools, although my kids have had a lovely time up until the last couple of years because they don't want their kids masked, and they just don't know what's going to happen, so they're choosing other options. Thank you.
And Tina Shields, do we have Tina Shields? All right, that concludes public forum.
So we do not have a motion, well, I guess we would have. Okay, so discussion. Ms. Henderson, I don't know who was first there, or Ms. Bounds?
Yes, I mentioned to the board the other night that I intended to bring a motion, and I will do so tonight. I don't think, I feel very strongly about these three items, and so I would like a board action on this tonight.
Patty?
And my motion is the Knox
Into your mic.
Oh, sorry. The Knox County Board of Education will not agree to the appointment of a neutral monitor for schools, will not submit a compliance plan as stated by the plaintiffs, and will not agree to a three-person compliance committee chosen by the plaintiffs, KCS and others. So that is my motion. It still stands, and I don't think anything in the last 48 hours has changed that. Sure. The Knox County Board of Education will not agree to the appointment of a neutral monitor for schools, will not submit a compliance plan as stated by the plaintiffs, and will not agree to a three-person compliance committee chosen by the plaintiffs, KCS, and others, and we will direct our law department to act in accordance.
Okay, so we have a motion by Ms. Bounds and a second by Ms. Horn. Any more discussion on that? Ms.
I have a clarifying question.
Can I ask a question? I mean, I feel like we're going to bring up a lot of issues tonight. Before we vote on winning one, can we kind of go through everything, or do we feel like we need to vote on? Can we have a little bit of discussion about how we handle that?
I'm okay with that. Mr. Dupler, do I need to withdraw the motion from the floor to, or how would that work?
Yes, because, I mean, right now, you can have a discussion on that particular motion. And then if
Okay.
you want to bring another motion, you can, but right now, it's discussion on that motion.
Okay. So I will withdraw that motion for now with the intention of bringing it back after our discussion.
And I'm totally fine about that. I
and I'm
just feel like
agreeable to
there's
that.
a lot that people want to
Yes,
talk about.
I just
so-
wanted to make sure we were able to discuss. Thanks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Get them all out.
Right.
Got some more.
Okay. So who was next over here? Ms. Babb?
Okay. I too am going to make a motion tonight. On Monday, me and several other people talked about our desire to just the frustration that we know everybody is feeling about no end in sight with this, and wanting to try to at least see if we can negotiate or mediate with the people, with the plaintiffs. Since then, we all received an email today from our law directors sort of talking about how complicated that is. And that is one thing I want to explain to people. I don't think the majority, I can't speak for everybody on this board because, once again, this is something we cannot talk about. But that is our frustration with this, and the complication of all of this is this is not a typical lawsuit where you go to your lawyer, you tell your lawyer what you want to do, and they act on your behalf. Anything we do has to be done in this platform. So before I put out what I want to do, I want Mr. Dupler to kind of explain to everyone what came out to us today in an email, sort of dealing with the complications over negotiation and mediation.
Thank you, Ms. Babb. Thank you, Madam Chair. So a couple things, as you've highlighted, and as I discussed some on Monday night, this board has to act as a group. I mean, there has to be an official vote, and then that's taken forward either by the law director's office, the administration, or whoever's supposed to take it. So same with negotiation and mediation. Negotiation on a lawsuit can happen a number of ways. It can happen in person or by phone, et cetera. It's just back and forth, usually between the attorneys. But the attorneys have to have direction from their clients. Mediation is a form of negotiation. Mediation often occurs with a third party. A lot of times another attorney who doesn't have a dog in the fight. And then you sit down and you'll try and hash it out between the parties. And all the parties are there, and it's all put into the open. Sometimes you go back between other rooms and things like that. Obviously, this board cannot undertake a traditional mediation as you would in some other lawsuits, because this board has, subject to the Sunshine Law, and your meetings have to be open. So any mediation, quote unquote, would have to be completely in the public, and you would lose all semblance of mediation at that point. So what we talked about today was that Ms. Babb and I and others in our office was, is there any other option to mediation? And there is, but I'll let you talk about that because that's what you wanted to talk about, right?
A lot of my frustration, and I know it's shared by many members of this board, is the Sunshine Law, which we all know came out over some illegal maneuvering, but really hampers us in this type of situation. And I look forward to talking to our legislators in the future about looking at some legislation that can maybe allow this, but that does not help us right now. So what I'm trying to do, and I'm going to put forward a motion. Once again, I'm not going to try to put for a vote because I think we need to have all this discussion first, but I wanted to put it out there. I feel like this is the only way that will allow us to do mediation, and I'm going to mention two people in this, and they have no idea I'm mentioning them, and they're both probably going to kill me, and there could be substitute people, but this was the way I could put it forward. So what I'm going to do is I move that the Board of Education approve our Knox County Law Department to engage in non-binding mediation, and that is because people representing us cannot agree to anything that doesn't come back before this board. So into non-binding mediation over the mass mandate litigation within the parameters of state law, within the Board of Education, represented by a member of the Board of Education, and I'm suggesting Chair Christie, and a representative of Knox County Schools, with my suggestion being Russ Oakes. Once again, I know Ms. Christie has no idea I was going to bring this, but I feel like if we could have one party from Knox County School, and Mr. Oakes also had no idea that I was going to do this, but my real idea is to have one representative of our board, along with Knox County Schools administration, that understands some of the complications as we go into this, to try to mediate. And I don't know if we can even get to a mediation or if the other side would even agree to it, but I would like us to try. So that's a motion I'm going to bring forward, but not at this time.
Can I go to Mr. Watson first and then come? Okay. Mr. Watson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Dupler, thank you for that explanation, and Ms. Babb for the clarity of that, for that motion. I'm supportive of that. I know that's something that's come up here and there in our different sessions, and I think that seems to be one of the only strategies to move forward. Mr. Dupler, can you also add just a little bit of context for the uniqueness of the situation that we have in Knox County Schools? I know for some, there's a big debate still about the efficacy of masks and all those types of things. And I think we've moved kind of beyond that. We're in a fairly unique situation in Knox County related to a mask mandate. Can you speak to that related to, just again, what the judge has ruled versus what the legislature has done versus our authority as a school board? Because I don't know that the public fully appreciates how unique this situation is.
Yes, Mr. Watson, I think I understand what you're asking. What you're asking is, we're under, this board and the school system is under a court-ordered mandate, which is fairly unique from what we can find in the country. There's been similar cases across the country. We have cited those similar cases in our briefing, particularly with the Sixth Circuit. But this judge put this mandate on this board, and obviously this board was unwilling to have that mandate because it voted against the mandate prior to the fall semester. So we have that, which is a direct court order, and although we have certainly been fighting against it and don't agree with it, we do have to respect that it is a court order. So the board has to deal with that, and then on the other side, we've got the state of Tennessee that passes a recent statute, 14-2-104 to be specific, that says you're not supposed to have a mask mandate, school board, except under very, very limited circumstances, and even then only for temporary times. So when we come to talk about mediation and negotiation, the school board then has to be mindful of not violating state law in coming to any type of proposed settlement. So does that cover what you wanted to cover?
Yes, thank you. That's helpful.
Was that all, Mr. Watson? Did you? Mr. Watson, did you have anything else right now?
No, I'm good for now. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Henderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I have a PowerPoint presentation, which I will do later, but that's a heat over there. But I want to bring to the board is something that we don't vote on because it's actually under the charter, and county commission has the power to do so. But I'll be honest, I've been very disappointed. This is not a reflection on Mr. Dupler in any way, but I have been very disappointed in how our law director has handled this case. They have filed failing cases at the trial level, at the appeals court, and I have actually drafted a letter to Mr. Butte requesting he seek outside counsel. If he won't act, I'm then asking county commission to utilize their power under the charter to grant the board the power to seek outside counsel. I'm going to sign this letter, and I will send it around and invite any other board member to sign it as well. Thank you.
So are you going to do a PowerPoint now, or are you?
I could do my PowerPoint now, unless, yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
why not?
If we could get, now, I do know that we were having some issues with the PowerPoint because we do have Mr. Watson. Oh, there we go. Okay, I do have handouts as well.
Okay. So that's
yes.
this?
Yes, so I provided handouts, or Ms. Coatney and Ms. Kelly provided handouts in case I couldn't get the PowerPoint to work. So I've actually asked the law department to send this to the judge. In a response from the law department, I was told that they were unaware of the scientific changes that have been happening in the past couple of weeks, which I found these articles on Google. So I'm going to go to the first one, and these are experts in the medical field, and these are experts who, for the past 2 years, have been advocating for masks in our schools and in our communities. The first one is an associate professor from Harvard. One-way masking is fine. Let's dispense with the notion that masks are only protective if everyone is wearing them. N95 masks, now widely available, offer better protection than universal surgical mask use, which is the approach used in hospitals. Masks for our kids in schools should be optional in the new year, and this is from December. We cannot continue to subject kids to the 2020 playbook as adults go out and do whatever they want. And remember, parents who don't feel comfortable can always have their children wear high-grade masks. Next slide, please. This is from a progressive columnist from the New York Times, and she's cared about masking this entire time and is highly regarded and a regular columnist in the New York Times. That's why I believe that mandatory school masking should end when the coronavirus rates return to pre-Omicron levels. Otherwise, I fear, at least in very liberal areas, a combination of extreme risk aversion and inertia means that school masking will persist indefinitely. And this is happening here in Knox County right now. There is no end date for these kids. There is no end date. Next slide, the Washington Post. 4 infectious disease physicians, 1 from Tufts Medical Center, 1 from Harvard Medical Center, 1 from Boston Medical Center. We were strongly supportive of universal masking policies in the fall of 2020. But universal masking policies in schools have not come without costs. In certain parts of the country where CDC mask guidelines were rigorously adhered to, children have not seen the faces of their teachers or classmates since early 2020. This affects learning and development, particularly for our youngest learners. Maintaining aggressive mitigation policies, including stringent mask rules, also sends children, families, and staff the message that our schools are not safe, and this is simply not true. We urge public health and school officials to educate communities on a one-way masking, emphasizing personal choice regarding self-protection and supporting those who choose to remain masked. Our children have sacrificed a lot to protect us. Now it's time for us to give them their childhood back. From the Atlantic, and again, these are all experts who have been supporting masking. From the Atlantic, imposing on millions of children an intervention that provides little discernible benefit on the grounds that we have not yet gathered solid evidence of its negative effects violates the most basic tenet of medicine: first, do no harm. The foundation of medical and public health intervention should be that they work, not that we have insufficient evidence to say whether they are harmful. Continued mandatory masking of children in schools, especially now that most school-age children are eligible for vaccine, fails this test. And then the last, I had a video, but that's not gonna work. So my last slide here is a list of all the states. 38 states currently have no mask mandate. 12 do. 5 more governors announced this week that they are ending their mask mandates in schools. Connecticut, ending it on February 28th. Delaware, ending their school mask mandate by March 31st. Massachusetts, y'all, set February 28th. New Jersey, March 7th. And Oregon, ending their school mask mandate by March 31st. Our kids are being held hostage as governors in blue states are lifting their mandates. It is now abundantly clear one-way masking works. It always has. It was a lie from the public health officials because they were worried about a run on N95 masks. And that's why I request anyone who wants to sign this letter to seek outside counsel. Thank you.
Ms. Horn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Henderson, for highlighting all of these, what we've known for a year and a half now, but people are finally catching up. So we have some scientific evidence that proves what we as moms and just common sense people already knew. But anyway, that's beside the point. I just have to say, on behalf of the parents that I represent, that I'm, appalled at this entire situation. Our kids are suffering academically. They're suffering in their reading. Many of these kids are going to have lifelong damage from this. And I watched a video today of a dad who was crying because of what it's done to his child. I think she was in Illinois. But kids are suffering emotionally and developmentally. on and on and on. So based on the things that you've highlighted, based on other studies that I've sent to the law department, what I would like to propose is that we direct them to file a change of circumstance, citing all of these, the many things that have come out now in the media with many doctors who are, who have stated various things. And so since this lawsuit was filed, the things that have, the things that are, the big things that have changed, vaccines are available to anyone in our school buildings, even though we know children are at extremely low risk from this illness, vaccines are available. Variants are getting less and less deadly as we go. This latest one is highly transmissible, but it's less virulent, and as the next variant comes around, it will be even more so. Mask mandates in schools are being lifted all over the country, as Ms. Henderson has already outlined. And also she's already outlined the fact that one-way masking protects the wearer, and there's also a study out of the UK that states that the risk of severe illness in children with health issues is no greater than healthy children. So based on these things, and like I said, I've sent a plethora, one document that had linked in probably 100 different studies and articles with masks. So the law department already has that. So based on these things, what I would like to discuss with the board is directing the law department to file a change of circumstance.
Ms. Sullivan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to ask the law director for some clarification on Ms. Bound's potential motion. If we were to adopt Ms. Bound's motion, that is only to the plaintiffs, correct? We wouldn't be saying that to the judge. And we couldn't, right?
Yes, Ms. Owen, that's correct. I mean, the way I understand her motion would be to reject any type of an agreement with the plaintiffs based upon what they filed Friday.
Thank you. I also have a couple of questions for Ms. Henderson. Looking at the second page of your handout, Michelle Goldberg, I missed her professional qualifications. What were those?
She is an opinion. She writes opinion columns for the New York Times.
So no professional
No.
qualifications? Okay. So then even assuming that, what pre-Omicron levels is she referencing? Do you know?
I'd have to look into that. I can find that out for you and send that to you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a pre-Omicron level that you would find acceptable?
I'd have to look into that. I'm happy to ask, though, some experts and find that out.
Thank you. The only thing I would point out at this time is that in states where mask regulations are changing, generally it's because their situations are changing. They have done, those states also have significantly lower deaths per million people than we have. At this time, we have lost 1 of every 296 people in Tennessee. 1 of every 296. That's significant. Most other states are not close to that number. When I was checking my math Monday, our staff said, I thought it was 300 something. Yes, it was a couple of weeks ago. And now it's 1 per 296. And those are actually last week's numbers because the state hasn't added this week's numbers yet. So we really need to take a second and think about, instead of just these really huge numbers and thinking about how many thousands per how many millions, think about one person of every 296 people in Tennessee. Thank you.
Ms. Babb?
Yes, I mean, I appreciate all the discussion tonight, and I share the frustration, and my thing that I brought out was just trying to figure out something. So this is a question from Ms. Horn, and maybe it's actually from Mr. Dupler. I just don't understand a change of circumstance and an explanation of, like, who would that go to? That's really all I'm trying to understand, really, how that would work and how that might affect what's going on.
Yeah, so that's what we've asked that question in executive session several times about if there's a change of circumstance, they can file a motion. So I would definitely like for Mr. Dupler to explain that, because I am certainly, he will have a much better explanation than I do.
Thank you, Ms. Babb. Thank you, Ms. Horn. So, yes, when this lawsuit was filed, it was the Delta wave, and there were not vaccines available for the younger children. So, based upon those two things alone, our office can file for a change of circumstance. Now, it's back before a judge who gave us this order to begin with. So, I mean, we all have to keep that in mind. But certainly, that can be done. In addition to the work that's being done with the Sixth Circuit, which is obviously an entirely different court than the court that gave this school system this mandate. But yeah, is that something else that can be done? Yes.
So I guess another question I have is, could some of this stuff be done simultaneously? We're kind of all putting stuff out there, but I don't know if we all decided Susan's recommendation is the best one, then we shouldn't do mediation, or we could do all of the above and Ms. Bounds. That's where I guess I'm looking for some legal expertise on, do we have to look at one thing forward, or are there multiple avenues that we can pursue? Because to me, I'd like to do the multiple. I want to go. I mean, I think that's what I want. I think that's the frustration everybody's hearing, is just we want to see everything possible being done, to see that this is, and maybe, to Ms. Owen's point, I mean, Omicron's out there right now, the numbers are super high, but if Knox County follows what the rest of the world is doing, we should sharply fall very soon. So not necessarily that it's today, but is there an end in sight? And that is what I think everybody is looking for, is an end in sight.
So, and I will just say, I have a motion that I'm going to make, and it actually mentions a change of circumstance at the.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
but did you have something else?
Well, I was just going to say quickly, I think that, when we've talked about this in executive session, we've been looking for the perfect opportune time, and it's still not here. Meanwhile, I think that kids still have a much higher risk when they get in the car to go to school every day than they do of this. So that is not changing. So like you said, maybe it's in 2 weeks when the numbers look a little bit better, but a lot has changed. I mean, a lot has changed even still, even though our numbers are high, a lot has changed. So I guess.
And I'm not asking for us to wait, I just think, I think that.
Yeah, I understand your question. I think it's a good question. And I think this is wise that we're going through everything, and then we can kind of sort back through it.
So to that question, I mean, can we do multiple things at the same time? I mean, or what's your opinion on that? And I know it's just your opinion.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Babb. So now we're getting into, again, strategy for active litigation, okay? And any good attorney, would tell his or her client that, can multiple things be going on at once? Yes. Can you expect great success with a shotgun approach? Probably not. But I don't want to get too far into, strategy, because again, all this is public. I mean, we're broadcasting it to the plaintiffs and everybody else. But in answer to your question, simply put, can multiple things be going on at once? Yes. Obviously, we disagree with Ms. Henderson's tact. Frustration is high and, you know, people want to point fingers. We get that. We are your attorneys, you know, unless the county charter is changed. So there you go.
Mr. McMillan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I'll direct this toward you, Ms. Babb, because you seem to be the one that wants to mediate, do things. I think in listening to board members speak, I think all of us, I mean, this is obviously not the first time we've talked about it, and we did vote to unmask. And I've been for that from the get-go. Having said that, as the law director said, there is a legal process. Now, without us litigating it here, I think the law department of Knox County has a very good idea of what we want, and they want to, I believe, this is my opinion, I believe they would want to rectify it as quickly as they possibly can. Given that, I think the best thing we could do is to take a vote tonight to support the Knox County Law Department and let them proceed. They're familiar with all the ins and outs, things we don't know, things we probably shouldn't know. But I will be glad to make a motion to that effect. We can still have good discussion. Go ahead.
Yeah, we'll continue with discussion and then do all the motions. So, Ms. Bounds?
Yes. So I will say that while I've never supported mask and would like for this to end tomorrow, I think to mediate with the plaintiffs at this time is ill-advised, especially in light of their most recent communication, I guess today or yesterday, and the additional demands that they made in that. So I would support providing the Sixth Circuit Appeals Court the opportunity to rule on the injunction. We don't have a timetable, but we know that the Sixth Circuit is closer to acting on it than ever before and could come at any time. And so ruling on that injunction, and according to what I've read, we have a good chance of success. And regardless, we will have more information for negotiation after the court rules. So when we are this close to the Sixth Circuit ruling on it, and we've suffered through this, and I don't want to suffer anymore, but I think it is ill-advised to jump into mediation at this time with the plaintiffs who do not seem willing and have made some very heavy demands on this district, including the ones that were most recently sent out after our law department reached out to them. So I do not support mediation at this time. I'd like to let the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals rule. Then we can negotiate from a position maybe of strength instead of weakness.
And I'm just going to jump in here and ask, everyone should have, I mentioned bringing a motion on Monday, you know, partly for a cause near and dear to me with children receiving speech services, which we have 3,358 in Knox County, that I believe Mr. Meyer said 2 to 3 of those currently have mask exemptions. I do feel like maybe Judge Greer's forgotten that he's holding us all hostage over here, because it seems like, you know, everybody else is just going on living their best lives, and he probably is too. So, you know, I would like to see us at least give relief to this group of students. And since I mentioned this on Monday, I started receiving a bunch of other emails that would just really break your heart, of other people who have asked for mask exemptions and have been denied for various reasons. And, my current concern is that in trying to do everything exactly the way I guess we've been directed to do, and maybe I don't know, but that we are currently discriminating against a whole other group of students. So my motion that everybody should have a copy of, and I'm going to read it, and then I will let Mr. Dupler speak to it, because I'm just going to warn everyone, he's not in complete agreement, but we still like each other. And we did have a little bit of a discussion today about it. So I will just let him weigh in on his thoughts on it afterwards. But my motion would be that any student who receives speech services, as well as any student or staff member who provided a note from a healthcare provider but was previously denied a mask exemption by Knox County Schools, be granted an exemption beginning Friday, February 11th, 2022. The principal or principal designee at each school will be responsible for keeping a list of exemptions and submitting it weekly to the Director of Student Services or his designee. The Knox County Board of Education requests that the Knox County Law Department file an emergency change of circumstance motion with Judge Greer by the end of the business day on Friday, February 11th, 2022. So I would let Gary speak to that now.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And yes, I have great respect for you, and we understand what you're trying to do. Of course, if this board directs us to file a change of circumstance motion, we will certainly do so. But it is my duty to unfortunately inform you that if this board votes in favor of what I would call a blanket exemption, in other words, not one that's individualized pursuant to the IDEA and the court's reinvigoration of policy C-240, that the court would likely hold this board in contempt.
Which I'm like I said, I strongly feel like we're discriminating against this group of students, and I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but I feel like I could, in good faith, if that happens, tell the judge that, he's not getting the emails I'm getting. He's not hearing from the parents I'm hearing from. And they have very real concerns. And I do feel like we are discriminating against a large group of students. So this is something I feel strongly about, and I will support it because, that's a risk I personally am willing to take, but I completely understand if the board is not supportive of that. So. Ms. Horn, I don't know who's next.
Well, I think first of all, I didn't read your whole motion before I made mine. I didn't realize you had in there a change of circumstance because I only read the first couple lines. But I think because a note I had made was around accommodations to all students who qualify for a mask exemption but have not, under the ADA, but haven't been granted one. But I think you cover it. I think that's covered in there.
Mr. McMillan?
I think there were other people's lights on. I'll let them speak and then come back to me.
Ms. Babb?
Sure. I'd like to address Ms. Bounds and comments, and I think we're actually more in agreement than disagreement.
Probably.
And I think where I'm coming from is a couple of things. My concern, if we knew a date for the Court of Appeals and when they were going to get back to us, there is the hope that this is an emergency appeal and that there's the hope that it will be looked at maybe sometime in March. But they could take months on even ruling on it. The hope is that there's not. That's my concern, is if we knew March 2nd, the courts were meeting and we were going to get an answer one way or the other, I totally probably agree with you. My concern is we don't have that kind of guarantee, and this could drag out a lot longer, even with the Court of Appeals. So that's a little bit of my concern. The second thing I want to address is the demands that we got from them. And I agree with you. I don't want to agree to those either. But I think that's where talking to several different attorneys, that's kind of how it goes. It's like they make demands and then we come back. It is a negotiation. I personally, we can't vote on everything, but me personally, I don't support those demands we saw. But I think that was a starting point. But from talking to several attorneys, that's how it usually works. It's an extreme, and you kind of keep working. And I think there are people on this board that don't think we should give it all, and I respect that, and I understand where you're coming from. I'm so frustrated of not seeing an end to it that I'm trying to figure out some way to get there. And what's been very interesting to me is I think we've all seen their extremes in our community. We've had the extreme anti-masker group. We've had other people that haven't wanted to leave their house and barely would do a mask. And I'll tell you, I've heard from both sets of those people this week calling me going, oh my gosh, it is time to end this, please. They were excited to hear we were talking about mediation. So it was kind of interesting to hear some of these people that are at extremes are finally going, if we can just get somewhere. So I just kind of wanted to say, I understand where you're coming from, but I wanted to explain kind of where I'm coming from too.
And can I respond to Ms. Beth before you go?
Yes.
And I respect you make a very convincing argument. My support would be more willing to wait. We're at the middle of February to wait till after spring break and see if something has been done. We're a month out, 4 weeks out. Now, I know for those children, because my granddaughter is one that has left Knox County Schools to go to a neighboring county because of the mask mandate and the anxiety that it was causing her. So for the children, I don't want to wait 4 weeks, but I just think it's better to so time-wise, I could support it if we waited maybe until after spring break and gave the court a chance to, because I think it's always better to negotiate from a place of strength. And I think with everything that Ms. Henderson said and, Ms. Horn said, if this Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals doesn't see what is obvious to the entire world, and 38 states don't have a mask mandate, and 5 of the bluest states have just lifted theirs, then shame on them. I think it's always better to negotiate from a position of strength, militarily and
Can I
medically
respond
too.
to Patty, Ms. Bounds?
Certainly.
And I don't have a problem with that and I could maybe hold off on mine if we could sort of say, if we don't get the resolution we want out of the appeals court, we're willing to call a special session to re-talk about this, because that's my concern is with the way our meetings go and things like that. I just don't want this dragging out so much longer, and I think we're all in agreement. Not all of us, but I think you and I are kind of probably on the same thing of we want some resolution.
I like that idea, Ms. Babb, and thank you.
Ms. Owen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have some questions for the law department. Could you help our board understand if we are found in contempt? What does that mean? Does that mean that nothing really would change with the mask mandate, but would that be individually in contempt or in contempt as a body?
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Owen. I can only speak in general terms. I don't know what the judge would do exactly, but federal judges have what's called civil contempt powers and criminal contempt powers. With this being, a board, as we've talked about, and you all act as a board after you vote, again, what I can tell you is that the most likely outcome, first of all, for some type of contempt initially, would likely be some type of financial, penalty, such as, thousands of dollars a day or something to that effect. If the contempt were to continue, and like you said, the judge would not change his ruling with contempt pending, it could get into criminal penalties for certain board members and things of that nature. So, but again, that's just kind of projecting down the road. The most likely scenario initially would be some type of financial penalty.
Thank you, Mr. Dupler. I also have a question about some potential different language in Ms. Christie's proposed motion. Would it be the same if we directed the staff to review and reconsider those who were previously denied if the parent submits a current note from a healthcare provider? So if the parent would like for us to review that and potentially reconsider, then the parent could request that. Would that be more individual? Would that take care of that blanket exemption?
Thank you, Ms. Owen. Yes, I mean, if this board were to tell the administration to go back and look at these cases individually, then in our office's opinion, that would meet the requirements under the court's order and the C-240.
Thank you.
Mr. Watson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the conversation. I think I've been able to follow most of it, and I completely understand what Ms. Christie, you're trying to accomplish, and Ms. Bounds are trying to accomplish, Ms. Babb is trying to accomplish. I've not heard much of what Ms. Owen has said, but I think, in my opinion, the most opportune thing to do at this time is to try to negotiate, and I think all the other points that we're talking about could be opportunities for negotiation. And I think if we, at this point, if we do something like put ourselves in contempt, I think it makes it much more difficult moving forward in trying to work with plaintiffs and or the court system. And so I'd like to get somebody to the table to have some conversations and see how we can move this forward, because I don't think nobody wants it to stay where it is, and it feels stuck with no resolution. And for all the reasons we've mentioned already, we're pretty limited in how we can negotiate that as a board. But I think Ms. Babb's suggestion of having two parties negotiate on our behalf is a good faith effort. And certainly without being certain of the timing of anything, I think the time is now for the negotiation. We can continue to choose to wait. My guess is that's going to continue to amp up frustration and among us as a board, but then also as the public and others, just to not have any answers. So I don't know that, I guess in my mind, I don't know that a negotiation at this point can hurt anything. And I think it would be worth our while to at least try.
Ms. Horn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to weigh in on that topic. I think Ms. Bounds makes good points about the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, that surely they are seeing what we are seeing every, if you watch the news for an hour, you'll see at least, half a dozen or more reports on what's happening across the country. So I would think that would be seen by everyone. I'm hesitant to go to mediation because of, I think when you have a listing of demands that we recently saw, I'm not sure that we're going to get to a place that we could ever agree, that I would ever be comfortable on. So I'm hesitant right now to do that. We can always revisit it later, and I'm happy to come to any called meeting at any time. But I would not want to go for that right now.
Ms. Henderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think Ms. Babb brought up some good points. I do agree. I'm frustrated. There is no end. I know we're all frustrated. I do agree, though. I don't care for mediation. I think I would be up to negotiations because it's a little less formal and it's a faster process, just to see, because we could see where they're coming from, because we can always say no, we're not accepting those terms. My concern is if we lose this appeal in the spring, our kids are in masks for next year. We're going to be the only county in the entire country where our kids are wearing masks if we lose this appeal. That's what's going to happen. And, trial dates were being set for 2023. I talked to other outside counsel outside of Knox County, and they even think it would be dragged out past that. So we're looking at possibly no end in this. So I do think I would like to see some kind of negotiation just to see where they're coming from. We can always say no. I think their list of demands that they sent us yesterday was absurd and absolutely ridiculous. But I do think because it's a faster process, I do agree with what you're saying.
Mr. McMillan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with a lot of what's been said, most of what's been said. We're all frustrated, but I do think, and first of all, let me say, we can always have a call meeting and talk about this. There's nothing to prevent that as long as, as long as we have a quorum. I guess you could meet and talk, even if you didn't have 5 people show up, couldn't you? Oh, Mr. Law Director. If there was a call meeting and only 4 people showed up, it wouldn't be a meeting, it would be a discussion, would it not?
That's correct. You couldn't have a vote at that point.
Yeah, but
yes.
I was just saying, pointing out that it's not really that difficult to get us together if we think that we've reached some point of impasse or something. I'm gonna make a motion to allow the law department to continue now that they know what our thoughts are, and to do everything that they feel is possible as quickly as they can, that does not violate the rules or jeopardize the case. Do I need anything else, Mr. Law Director, or does that basically give you?
Are we going to do you want to finish the discussion before we start making motions?
I want to make a motion if anybody will second it. I don't think we're going to go anywhere with the discussion, really.
Okay. I'll second. So we have a motion by Mr.
Wait a minute, I didn't get a second.
Jennifer did.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So we have a motion by Mr. McMillan and a second by Ms. Owen. Do you want to read the motion, Ms. Coatney?
Mr. McMillan, please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but the motion is to allow law department to continue now that they've heard the board's thoughts, to do everything they feel possible as quickly as they can that doesn't break rules or jeopardize the case.
I have a question regarding the motion.
Yes.
Mr. Dupler, if we were to do this, would this preclude us from also passing, or prevent us from also passing Ms. Babb's motion? I guess what I'm asking is, could both be in play at the same time?
Thank you, Mr. Watson. But from the motions that I've heard, yes, there can be multiple motions made that would not conflict with that particular one.
The way I understand Mr. McMillan's motion is it's really a vote of confidence for the law department to continue on its course. I'm asking, if we do that, does that then prevent us from entering into a third-party negotiation?
No, we can continue with the litigation as quickly as possible, but also enter into negotiations.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion by
Ms. Christie?
Yeah.
Pardon me, but
Yeah.
I want to ask the law director
Okay.
something. In reference to what Mr. Watson was asking, it would take a vote of the board. You all as lawyers within the law department can do whatever you deem reasonable now that you know the feelings and everything. But you can't, without a vote by a majority of this board, engage in discussion, negotiations, that sort of stuff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. McMillan, so yes, I mean, you know, negotiation is for this board is going to be a separate part of the equation because this board will have to vote either similar to what Ms. Babb suggested, which is you know, designating someone to negotiate, but there again, that's non-binding. Or this board would have to discuss and come up with something in the way of a proposal or, you know, settlement type of demand. So either way, this board would have to weigh in on any type of settlement. That's the bottom line.
That's what I wanted. They can't just individually interject themselves into the thing. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. McMillan and a second by Ms. Owen. Well, do you mind reading it one more time, and then we'll do a roll call?
Ask a question. I mean, right now, our law department is charged with doing exactly what Mr. McMillan is saying, I think, right? And so I guess I'm a little confused. We're going to vote for them to do their job? I mean, I guess I want clarification. I mean, it sounds like they're already supposed to do what you're telling them to do. So what are we voting on that's different than what they're doing right now?
After they have heard all these comments and everything, it goes back to what Ms. Bounds was saying. I think that they will do anything within their legal power that they can do right now. They may not be able to do anything. They may have to wait until they hear something from the judge. I mean, from the Sixth Circuit. But at least you were the one, I believe, Ms. Babb, that wanted the people of Knox County to know that where we stood and what we wanted. And this is one way of encouraging that. I'm not for negotiating with the plaintiffs or doing any of that. I just think this is one time you need to let the course work its way through. One thing I'm convinced about, and I'll say no more about it, but they're not, the people that filed this suit are not really concerned about that much about the health. The person they got to file the suit has another motive in mind. I don't think they really care about that. And you know what I'm talking about. Thank you.
Ms. Bounds?
Yes, what I hear, and I heard your question too and understand, but I think what I hear Mr. McMillan saying is this is the first time publicly that this board has weighed in very strongly because we've tried to be patient, but has weighed in this strongly and given the motions that we've talked about bringing forward, given the discussion that our law department would take all of that into account and react to what has happened in the discussion tonight. Does that make sense? That's what I hear them saying. Yes, their job still remains the same, but now they have, well, a large majority of the board saying, here's what we want. Just like my motion, no, we're not going to let these outsiders come into our schools and spy on our kids and teachers. So I think it's just, that's. I think we're going to have to vote on all these different
Right,
things. Exactly.
Our law department otherwise is going to do exactly what they've done, which I think maybe Mr. McMillan's happy with, but I feel like there's a lot of us here because, and this got put on the agenda because a lot of us are frustrated. Yes. So to me, I'm not happy with just the same old, which I think is what I feel like you're proposing.
No, I'm not happy with it either. But I have been around long enough and know a little bit about the process to know what you can do and what you cannot do and what you can do to damage your case. I'm not any lawyer. I don't profess any, I don't want to mislead anybody. But I've seen enough and know enough about the law that sometimes, even as difficult as it is, you just have to ride the wave out. And I just want I guess Mr. Watson said a support of confidence or a vote of confidence. I want them to know, and I know some of you are upset. I know there's a lot, but maybe after this discussion, this meeting tonight, and if the vote turns out to be positive, maybe the public will understand a little bit more, and they'll not. It's not like they're, like the law department's gone on a vacation. I assure you, it's not that. So that's where I'm coming from. Thank you.
Ms. Horn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, let me say that I think that it's important to note that I think Mr. Dupler gets to sit here with us representing the law department, and he's not always the one who is making these decisions, and I think that's important to note because I know as board members, a lot of times things happen in the district and everybody's blaming the Board of Education, and we didn't know anything about it. So, I understand how he feels, so I just wanted to make that point. But I think what we may want to discuss, and kind of relative to what Mr. McMillan has talked about, is perhaps we ask the law director to put a fresh face on this case from the law department. There are other attorneys in the law department that could work alongside Amanda Morris and continue to and kind of take over a lead. I know a lot of people have a lot of respect for Houston Havasu. Perhaps if we ask the law director to ask him to step in and assist in this case and have some fresh perspective on the case, that could be helpful. And so that's still depending on the work that the law department's already doing, but it's putting something different in front of the judge.
So would this be offered up as a friendly amendment in addition to, because we have his motion on the floor?
Yes.
I have no problem with you adding it to ask for somebody additionally within the department, as long as they're within the department.
Yeah, it would be an ask.
And keep in mind, he's under, the law director is really under no obligation to do that if he chooses not to.
Yes, correct. It would simply be an ask.
Right, and I requested that yesterday, actually, in an email to the law director, that same. So this is a friendly amendment to his, in addition to his motion, is that?
So I think that whoever seconded that, his motion would.
That would be Ms. Owen.
What if we just stop?
I think I would.
As parents, what if we just stop?
I think I would be okay with.
No, you can't interrupt while we're conducting a public meeting, but you cannot interrupt a public meeting. I'm sorry, but you can't interrupt a public meeting.
That is the third option.
Are you?
I think I would agree that that would be acceptable as long as it is a clear request that the law director consider, and not that we are trying to direct the law director.
Right, it would be an ask. It would definitely be a request.
Okay. So, Ms. Henderson, did you have something on that specific motion?
Well, I have a question for Mr. Dupler, and tell me if I should ask this question later. So can the Court of Appeals consider new evidence, or is it based on the pleadings and moment of injunction?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Henderson. In the current appeal, the Court of Appeals can only consider what's already, been in evidence in the documents submitted. They can consider the law, and certainly we have submitted not only controlling law on the Sixth Circuit, but also litigation that has happened more recently in other jurisdictions due to masking and, vaccines and things of that nature. So, but the answer to your question is they can only consider what has now been submitted to them.
So basically, the Court of Appeals will hear the same case that's already lost twice, correct?
No. The Court of Appeals will now consider fully what the trial court should have heard in a very, very preliminary hearing that was at the very start of a litigation, and that there was a preliminary motion that was heard, and I think that's what you're also referring to. But a preliminary motion are usually dismissed as a matter of course. This will be the first real chance for a separate court to actually hear these issues.
Ms. Babb, did you have something on this motion?
Can I think it may be, I think I want to withdraw my friendly amendment. I think it may be clear to vote on these two things separately.
Okay. Ms. Owen, did you have something about Mr. McMillan's motion?
Sort of.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think there's some confusion about exactly where we are in this process, and maybe we need to have Mr. Dubler again remind us of where we are in the litigation and that there hasn't really been a trial.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Owen. So what happened was, in a normal litigation, the case is filed, and over a period of time, and normally litigation takes time. It's a very lengthy and often frustrating process that can take a year, 2 years, possibly even more. But what happened in this particular case was the plaintiffs immediately after filing the case went to the judge and asked that masks be put on not the Knox County Schools immediately, and basically took whatever small proof they had with them at the time, and the judge went ahead and granted what's called an injunction, preliminary injunction. So as is proper, our office asked that injunction be reconsidered by the judge, and the judge who had already issued a 50-plus page opinion said no, and then that's what gave us the opportunity to appeal to the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, to have a panel of judges actually look at the situation. So once the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals rules, it then comes back down to the trial court, and there's been discussion here today about outside attorneys talking about trial dates, and our office has already said that. The trial date at the earliest in this case would likely be late this year, but probably sometime next year. So as far as the merits of the case, we could be fighting this for a while, but the immediate concern is trying to get the injunction removed and masks off kids.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so Ms. Henderson.
Yes, I actually have a question. I think it goes along with Mr. McMillan's motion. Mr. Dubler, is there a way, because I think part of the frustration is too, the public has no idea what's going on with this case. Frankly, we don't know what's going on. I feel very out in the dark about what is going on. How long is this going to last? Can David Buke, the law director, come to our meetings and give an update? I don't know, once a month, whatever. He's elected, and he needs to be held accountable too. And he is not getting in touch with the public. No one knows what's going on with their own children with this case. I think he needs to come here and speak fairly often and let everyone know what's going on with this case.
Would you like to take that one?
I guess, I don't. I don't consider that a question, but I mean, that would be up to the law director, David Book, and I can certainly ask him about that. I would say that anytime any of you board members want to talk about the case, we're always open to do that. And we also have partnered with the school system and specifically with the superintendent to put out updates, and there's now a page on the knoxschools.org website talking about updates as well.
Thank you. I have one other question. How many medical professionals did the law director bring in the September case as witnesses? Oh, sorry. But the other side did have experts, correct?
At the preliminary hearing in September, it was literally a trial by ambush, and we were not given the opportunity to present medical evidence.
So at no other time there was opportunity to present that?
There's not been the opportunity since, because we, again, appealed it to the Sixth Circuit as soon as possible.
I'm not trying to attack you, Mr. Dupler, you're just the lawyer that happens
No,
to be here.
I'm just.
So you said that would be up to if Mr. Buke wanted to come here. So as his client, we can't request, it's just up to him if he just feels like coming.
No, that's not what I said. I said I would certainly, take that to him, and that's certainly his decision.
But then it's up to him. We can't tell him as a client, we want an update on where we are on this case. And the public needs an update.
Well, again, you all can talk to him at any time, and any of us in the law director's office, and we are updating with Knox County Schools, but if you feel that more updates are needed, then we can certainly look at that as well.
Thank you. I just feel that Mr. Buke cares more about his reputation than the 60,000 kids in our schools.
Ms. Bounds, you can have something on Mr. McMillan's motion.
To kind of piggyback off of what Mr. Dupler said, so am I correct in that when you said kind of trial by ambush or whatever it was, preliminary injunction by ambush, the other side only presented one medical professional at that injunction, whatever that was that they did? Was there more, and questionable at that, or that would be my opinion, but.
Other attorneys in my office, attended, or our office attended, but that is my understanding.
Okay, so we were not allowed to provide medical evidence until we get to the Sixth Circuit Court. They brought theirs and they were allowed to. Is that correct?
Well, again, the trial on the merits hasn't occurred. That's normally
Right.
where you would present
Right.
medical evidence.
Right.
Through depositions or other in-person testimony. This was just a preliminary hearing, and that's why we ended up having to appeal it to the Sixth Circuit, because of the nature of a preliminary hearing.
And I will just add, and I would encourage the board members to do that. When I first came on this board and I knew very little about school law, I spent untold number of hours in the law director's office. And of all the offices in Knox County, other than our former mayor, I've never seen a more open door policy. I was never asked to wait. I was always ushered in. They would spend as much time with me as I needed going over details. So, and I can see why, I'm not being critical of Ms. Henderson, but I can see why it would be difficult, because we want the outcome to be favorable to us, to do this in a public arena. So I would just encourage the members of the board to go by on a weekly basis, every 2 days, whatever they feel like they need to speak with the people in the law department and get updated on that. So, anyway.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor by Mr. McMillan, a second by Ms. Owen, and we'll have Ms. Coatney read this and do a roll call vote, and then several have requested a break, a 15-minute break before we put any other motions on the floor. Is everyone good with that? Okay, Ms. Cutney?
Mr.
Restate the
McMillan's,
motion.
yes, Mr. McMillan's motion was to allow the law department to continue, now that they have heard the thoughts of the board, to do everything they feel possible as quickly as they can that doesn't break rules or jeopardize the case. And Ms. Satterfield,
Yes.
Ms. Owen,
Yes.
Mr. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Babb,
Pass.
Ms. Horn, Ms. Henderson, Ms. Bounds, Mr. McMillan, Ms. Christie.
No.
And Ms. Babber, would you like to change your vote now that, Ms. Horn, would you like to change your pass vote? That's 5 yes votes, 2 no votes, and 2 passes.
So motion carries. All right, so we will take a 15-minute break and then come back for everyone else's motions. is overwhelmed like Christie is. Okay, we are back. So continuing on with our motions, I guess Ms. Babb, would you like to begin?
I'm sorry. I want a little bit of clarification, I think from Ms. Horn and from Christie. I mean, I think, Ms. Christie, when you were, sorry, I just ate something. When you were bringing this forward on Monday, I really liked it. What I was thinking you were going to propose was kind of like at the beginning when we went to the judge asking for further exemptions. So I thought that was kind of the approach we were going to take, is asking for those exemptions to be added for those speech therapy kids. It kind of concerns me a little bit about the way you're doing it. I mean, I totally support that. I feel like there need to be more exemptions. And I don't know what your thoughts on, or even maybe from the legal department, if we're even allowed to ask for more exemptions, medical exemptions. So maybe it's a question first from Mr. Dupler, if we're allowed to ask for more medical exemptions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Babb, I mean, there's nothing stopping, the board from asking for more, now chance of success, we could certainly debate on that, but nothing stopping a request.
I guess that was just the, what I was thinking, and I guess where I want some clarification from Ms. Horn and from Ms. Christie, because Ms. Christie has put the change of circumstance in hers, and then Ms. Horn, are you feeling like the way Ms. Christie has done it covers what you wanted, or did you feel like, I guess, who are we asking?
Well, we probably need to separate these two, because I don't know that the entire board will support mine.
Yeah, I think it's
one
kind of
might have more support than the other, so we could maybe.
Okay, I think that would add some clarity, because I think.
Right.
And it's not like I'm sympathetic. I think you know where I'm going.
Yeah.
But, and then one other thing I'm going to say, and I think we brought this up a little bit, one of my concerns about the appeal, I think we've all talked about how obvious it is that the circumstances have changed. I know Ms. Henderson has cited a lot of stuff, but the Court of Appeals is not necessarily going to take any of that into consideration. We want them to, but that's not my understanding of the way it works. That's not part of it, and that's where I keep getting really concerned about the Court of Appeals. I know there's a lot of optimism that they are going to go in our favor, and I think if it was, if you look at, the amount of states that are getting rid of mask mandates, the countries that are, the cases going down, I think that does weigh very heavily for our case. But if those things are not getting considered, that's what makes me nervous on considering some other things.
Right, and just to speak to your concern about mine, really, and I understand that, it might not get a lot of support, but I do feel strongly about going on the record. I think these kids that have been denied the mask exemption and the kids that are receiving speech services have really been in masks way too long. And I just feel strongly about that. And, if I get summoned to court over it, then so be it. But I do feel ethically I can make the argument that this is what's in the best interest for these children. Now, he may not agree with me, but he would be wrong, but he may not agree with me. So I'm going to continue with that, and if it fails, it fails. And if somebody wants to bring forth something different, that
I might suggest, if yours fails, to then reword, because I'm very sympathetic to what you put forward. I don't know that I can support it in that way, but I think I could support us asking for an exemption to ask for an additional medical exemptions.
Ms. Horn.
Well, that's kind of what I was thinking, Ms. Babb. Would it be better to, because I've been frustrated because I feel like that the medical exemptions, a lot of them that have been requested have been denied. And so, especially if there's doctor's notes involved, that we're taking on the role of the doctor, and that's inappropriate.
Right. How about I do this? How about I make my motion? It might not even get a second, and if that happens, then so be it. we can vote on it, and then if it fails, we can go from there. How's that? Okay. So I will make a motion, and I'm going to remove the second part and let you take that one. Is that okay? So I will make a motion that any student who receives speech services, as well as any student or staff member who provided a note from a healthcare provider but was previously denied a mask exemption by Knox County Schools, be granted an exemption beginning Friday, February 11th, 2022. The principal or principal designee at each school will be responsible for keeping a list of exemptions and submitting it weekly to the Director of Student Services or his designee. So we have who wants to be on the record? We have a motion by Ms. Christie and a second by Ms. Satterfield. Can we do a roll call vote, Ms. Courtney?
I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yes.
Yes, so I think I heard it correctly, but I'm not positive. Mr. Dupler worded the way that it was, will that put us in contempt? I know we talked about that earlier, but I just want to be clear on the wording.
Yes, that will likely put the board in contempt if that passes.
Thank you, Gary.
You said yes, Mr. Dupler?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Coates?
Ms. Satterfield?
Pass.
Ms. Owen?
No.
Mr. Watson?
Did you say Mr. Watson?
Yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Watson?
I'm sorry. Pass.
Ms. Babb?
No.
Ms. Horn?
Yes.
Ms. Henderson?
Yes.
Ms. Bounds? Yes. Mr. McMillan? Ms. Christie?
Yes.
And Ms. Satterfield, would you like to change your pass vote? The vote count as it stands is 4 yes votes, 3 no votes, and 2 pass votes. Mr. Watson, would you like to change your pass vote?
No.
It's 4 yes votes, 3 no votes, and 2 pass.
Okay, so the motion fails, as we expected. Yeah, I know. Ms. Owen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to make a modified motion that the board directs the staff to individually review and reconsider medical exemption requests that were made with a note from a healthcare provider but previously denied, and to also consider exemptions for any student in speech services who provides that same kind of medical note. And the rest of, I assume the rest of her motion, does that need to go with it?
I'll second. Ms. Babb?
Yes, so you're just asking that we just review things again, not actually go to the court asking for further exemptions.
Right, I'm asking that we review those that have been denied, review them individually, and if necessary, reconsider those. And then if there's a student who receives speech services who brings in a note from a healthcare provider, then those would also be individually considered.
Ms. Babb?
This is probably a staff question. If we could have a little.
Is there a second? I'm sorry.
Yes, I second it.
You did? Okay, I'm sorry.
Is there a staff member to sort of explain how the exemptions have been going and how we've chosen who to exempt and not exempt, just so that I understand the process better before we decide on voting on this? Sorry, Mr. Myers.
Well, thank you so much, Ms. Babb. So, you know, in terms of the interpretation of the order from Judge Greer, what was asked of us as a staff and working with the law department, we felt the most manageable thing to do was to build it into structures that already exist, right? It's structures that our school-based staff understand, it's structures that student support staff understand. So that's why we use the S-team process and then looking at eligibility under Section 504, and then, of course, eligibility under the IDEA, which means essentially no one person makes that decision, right? Because decisions surrounding a 504 or an IEP are team-based decisions, right? So we look at students comprehensively. So for example, if it's a student with a 504 with a diagnosis of asthma, we're going to include one of our nurses on that team to be part of that decision as well. So no one person owns any of those decisions. And in terms of revisiting the exemptions or accommodations around masking, any family who has a student with a 504 or an IEP can request a meeting at any time to revisit what accommodations are present in those two plans. And if families also have the opportunity to file a grievance if they're not satisfied with their 504, they can file that grievance first to my office, and after I view it, if they're still dissatisfied, they can grieve further to Mr. Thomas, and if they're still not satisfied, then they could grieve to the board. Obviously, under the IDEA, families have the right to file due process if they don't agree with their IEP. So there are multiple avenues for families to explore to try and get whatever the appropriate accommodation for their student may be, right? So we have, I believe, 375 students, which I don't believe it, I know it, because that's a pretty precise number, so that must be the number. 375 students that receive some sort of masking accommodation. Most of those are full exemptions that have been granted. In addition to that, we have, I think it's 150, approximately 150 staff who also have masking accommodations. Again, most of those are full exemptions. Some of the staffing masking accommodations are actually specifically related to the types of students that those staff work with. So for example, many of our speech language pathologists use face shields and social distancing when working with students when they're working directly with students to provide those speech services and things. So I think that we're definitely, our team is trying to manage those requests as best we can in line with the recommendations and interpretations of Judge Greer's order. And again, the goal being to build these processes into things that we already know how to do, right? Our principals and school staff know how to run an S team. They know how to have a 504 meeting. They know how to have an IEP meeting, right? So we've tried to build these into pre-existing structures so that we could operate as efficiently as possible. Because certainly, as you can imagine, when this order first came down and we laid out what the plan was going to be, there were an awful lot of requests for S teams and 504 meetings and IEP meetings.
I guess my concern with, and it's not that I'm against what Ms. Owens is suggesting, it just sounds like after hearing what you're saying, there's probably been a lot of review, that there's probably not going to be a lot of change. So what I'm wondering is it maybe there are further exemptions that would help some of these families get exemptions that we're sort of seeing feel like need them? And obviously, we don't know if Judge Greer would do them, but would that help your office some if it was broadened what some of the exemptions were? And that's where I don't know enough about what the
Sure, and
order says.
so currently, when the judge first passed the order, he gave us two exemptions. It was students with tracheotomies, and I think it was students with autism, right? We no longer have a list of quote-unquote approved exemptions, right? He put it back into the hands of school personnel to make those decisions within the frameworks provided under Section 504 and the IDEA, right? So theoretically, no one can show up and just say, hey, I have X diagnosis, give me my mask exemption, right? How it works is you bring this information in, the team determines whether or not you're eligible for services and accommodations under Section 504 or the IDEA, and then the teams decide what's an appropriate accommodation. And an appropriate accommodation in 375 of those cases has been, in many of them, full mask exemptions. Some of them it's mask breaks. Some of them it's a face shield, right? So those teams decide what the appropriate accommodation is. I guess what I would say to the internal review and those things is those avenues already exist, right? If a family wants to review their accommodations under Section 504 or the IDEA, they need but request a meeting, and we'll hold a meeting within a reasonable amount of time under Section 504 and within 10 days under the IDEA to revisit those plans. And they can also still file a grievance under Section 504 also.
Okay, so I guess in light of that and what you've told us, from what Ms. Owens has proposed, there's probably not a big difference on what we're already doing. Is there? Or?
From my perspective, there is not a big difference between, except for my interpretation of what Ms. Owen is asking would be that we go in and reevaluate every single request for mask accommodations versus if a family has an issue with their established mask accommodations, they call us and schedule a meeting and we revisit the plan.
I would be glad to amend that if we need to.
Ms. Bounds?
So, Jason, if a family just met with a principal and they were denied an exemption, should they have requested an S-team or had an S-team, or in the beginning were we just principals meeting with them and making their own decisions?
That's a great question. So no, that should not be happening. I think I responded to a parent about that exact same concern this morning, and one of my department supervisors is going to reach out to that parent if they've not already today, tomorrow, to shore that up. Again, no one person should be making the decision about masking accommodations, right? And I know you know, right? It's a team.
Right.
It's a team decision from the very beginning, right? Whether we're looking at the eligibility or what the individualized plan for a student's going to be, it is going to be a team decision.
So in that case, those parents that were denied an exemption based on a principal making that decision might want to come back and request an S-team.
I would definitely encourage them to request an S-team.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, so Ms. Coatney, would you like to restate Ms. Owens' motion, or Ms. Owens?
Mr. Dupler, in your opinion, do we need this motion if this is already being done, or have we now communicated better with the public so that it's no longer necessary?
I think that's what Mr. Myers said, but what I heard him say was that if the board wants to pass this motion, then the administration would take another look at it, and parents wouldn't have to reapply or apply, so.
But I think he's also telling us that's an exorbitant number, right, potentially?
Mr. Myers?
Sorry.
I'm going to need you to repeat that.
Okay. My question is, have we now, instead of this motion, have we now clearly communicated with parents so that this motion is no longer necessary? Or should we keep this motion and direct the staff to do this? Is it going to be an excessive amount of extra work to duplicate something you've already done?
I think that my recommendation would be that we let the processes we have continue to work. We can certainly send out an update to our own staff just as a friendly reminder that if you're getting mask requests and maybe a parent doesn't know the right thing to call the meeting, that we're saying, hey, well, okay, let's have an S-team and that sort of thing. But I think that we already have processes in place to address parental concerns surrounding those plans.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Myers. Madam Chair, I withdraw the motion.
Okay, so moving forward, did we have other motions that we wanted considered, Ms. Bounds or Ms. Horn? Ms. Bounds?
Terry, do you have that, or do I need to pull it up and read it again? You might can find it quicker than I can. Let me go back. Okay. I think I've got it. So I make a motion that the Knox County Board of Education will not agree to the appointment of a neutral oh, you okay? I'm sorry. Okay, neutral monitor for schools, will not submit a compliance plan as stated by the plaintiffs, and will not agree to a 3-person compliance committee. So that is my recommendation, and the board would direct the law department to act in accordance.
So motion by Ms. Bounds, a second by Ms. Horn. Any discussion on that?
I have a clarifying question on the motion.
Yes, Mr. Watson.
Ms. Bounds, when you say neutral, can you define what you mean?
I believe that is the term the plaintiffs used.
Well, I guess what I'm asking is, do you mean explicitly third-party monitors? Do you mean any monitor at all? Like, I guess that's what I'm asking.
Well, I think the way I read their demands, neutral monitor could be a third party, but the compliance plan also in that they also indicated that they would like a monitor in every school, and that they did not specify. I guess that could be a teacher, someone in the school. So I think the neutral monitor was more of a third-party person, but you would probably have to ask the plaintiffs, because I'm not sure. This is their wording.
Thank you I appreciate that. I spoke to some of my schools this week, and also just thinking through it, the logistics, I agree that any kind of third-party monitoring is going to be fairly difficult. I don't know that, I hate the ordering of the motions, and that I don't know that I want to support this, only because I think if we go into negotiation, if Ms. Babb's motion is approved, I think it could hurt any point in negotiation, but thank you.
Can I respond?
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Christie. It possibly could, but I think it also lets them know where we stand on this. And I think a third party could be with a lot of legal issues, and I think it's not fair to ask, even if they volunteer, any staff member whose job is educating children to be a monitor and report back to the judge. So I think this is a motion that I'm willing to stand on, and whatever the consequences may be, because I don't think that is a good message to send to our teachers and students, that they're being watched constantly and they don't know when.
And I will just weigh in on that too, Ms. Bounds. I mean, and I've said it before, we don't have the staff as it is to monitor. I mean, we don't. I mean, we don't have subs, we don't have custodians. We've heard it said time and time again. We just don't have the staff, and a lot of it's because of this mask mandate. I mean, we have lost a lot of staff because of this mask mandate. I do have a question for you, Mr. Duport. So, you know, if this passes, and in light of that, I guess, what are some of the potential responses the judge might come back with? I mean, if we don't have the staff, could he try to make us find staff? I mean, is he going to send in federal marshals, or, I mean, I assume that they're at his disposal too, if he wanted to send in U.S. Marshals to our schools to enforce, maybe.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's premature to even look at that. I mean, Ms. Bounds' motion goes to what the plaintiffs have requested, and they requested that in the form of a motion to the judge. So the court hasn't made a ruling yet. So hard to say, you know, how the court would respond. I know that our office will certainly oppose the motion on behalf of the school board, but as I understand it, Ms. Bounds is simply saying that she doesn't want to agree with outside monitoring, which I don't see any legal issue with that.
Ms. Henderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say I support Ms. Bounds' motion. I've talked to several schools recently that don't even have janitorial staff. They haven't had soap in bathrooms for weeks. but they want to send in mask police. So let's talk about where our resources are really going. So I 1,000% support Ms. Bound's motion on this.
So we have a motion by Ms. Bounds and a second by Ms. Horn. Okay, so I guess we need to do another roll call vote.
Ms. Satterfield?
Pass.
Ms. Owen?
Pass.
Mr. Watson?
Pass.
Ms. Babb?
Yes.
Yes, pass.
Ms. Horn?
Yes.
Ms. Henderson?
Yes.
Ms. Bounds? Mr. McMillan? Ms. Christie?
Yes.
Ms. Satterfield, would you like to change your pass vote? Ms. Owen? Mr. Watson? Would you like to change your pass vote?
What's the vote right now?
It is 5 yes votes, 1 no vote, and 3 pass votes.
I'll keep it as a pass, thank you.
Okay, so motion carries. Ms. Babb.
Okay, I'm going to make my motion that I have changed a little bit, and I don't know where it'll go, but I said, okay, I move that the Board of Education approve our Knox County Law Department to engage into non-binding negotiating over the mass mandate litigation within the parameters of state law, with the Board of Education represented by a member of the Board of Education Board Chair Christie and a representative of Knox County Schools, with my suggestion being Jason Myers.
Second.
So we have a motion by Ms. Babb and a second by Ms. Satterfield. I don't know that I'm the best person to enter into this mediation after seeing the most latest demands. You know,
Well, it has to pass.
I mean, I know that it would have to pass and whatever Mr. Oaks and I came up with, it would still come back
It's
to the
actually Mr.
board.
Myers now.
Oh, Mr. Myers. Oh.
Mr. Myers got my lucky nomination.
But it would still have to come back to, just to be clear, it would not be me and Mr. Myers negotiate. I mean, anything that we did would have to come back to the board for a
And that is
vote.
non-binding, and I mean, that's the whole thing. Is
Right.
as a board, we can't come up with a negotiating tactic, but also they can't negotiate something and guaranteeing. It is non-binding. You know, I do think highly of both of those people. I think they bring some expertise that, you know, I don't know if even if this board would pass it, I don't know if it would go anywhere, but I'm just trying.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that there's anything to lose by it. Ms. Horn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm completely comfortable with Ms. Christie and Mr. Myers representing us. We talked earlier about waiting for the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. Are you suggesting this for now?
Yes, I am, because on the mediation, I was going to say to wait, but I think I've changed it to negotiation, and I would like to say go ahead and start, because I think even sometimes, even if we say we're going to do this, I've seen nothing happens quickly in the legal realm. So I would like to, I am proposing to go ahead and ask the law department to start negotiations.
Okay. Mr. Dubler, would you like to weigh in on this at all? Do you have anything to add to the conversation? I mean, because I guess the question would be, I feel like, you know, you've had the law department has had conversation with them. So would this be a different, would there be a difference, I guess?
Thank you, Ms. Horn. Yeah, yes, there would be, I mean, a difference, because, I mean, we can continue to, a negotiation would be a continued conversation, whether it be, you know, telephone, email, et cetera. But if the board has some representatives that the board would like for us to, you know, confer with, then, I mean, that would be a change in that aspect of it. And then, but as you all have readily recognized, no matter what happens, I mean, if we came to some type of a proposed resolution, it would have to come back before the full board. It would. It would have to come back before the full board for approval of any type of settlement.
Yeah, and that would be the reason I would be comfortable doing it, is I would not, want it to just be on me and Jason. So we have a motion by Ms. Babb. Did we get a second? Oh, and a second by Ms. Satterfield. So is there any more discussion on this motion? So, Ms. Putney, you want to do a roll call?
Ms. Satterfield?
Pass.
Ms. Owen?
Yes?
Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Ms. Babb?
Yes.
Ms. Horn?
Pass.
Ms. Henderson? Yes. Ms. Bounds? No. Mr. McMillan? No. Ms. Christie? Yes. That's 5 yes votes and 2 no votes and 2 pass votes. Ms. Satterfield, would you like to change your pass? Ms. Horn, would you like to change your pass?
Motion carries. Ms. Horn, did you have?
Yes. Let's see. Let's see. Before I make this motion, if I could have a little bit of feedback first. One of the motions that I discussed is directing the law department to file a change of circumstance based on current conditions. So what I would be interested in hearing from the board on, and before I make the motion, is if anybody has this, and we don't have to come to a decision, but just throwing it out there before I make the motion, would anybody have an opinion on whether we direct that now or put a date on it I guess that's the question, is would the board be in favor of that as of now?
Putting a date on the
change of motion, to file the change of motion, or would board members be more in favor of just directing that for now to do as soon as possible?
Right. I mean, in my motion, I had put the date on it because I wanted
to have.
I didn't want it to get.
Okay, I see that.
I didn't want it to get lost. I mean, and
Gotcha.
I'm not locked into that date.
Mhm.
I just felt like we needed to put a hard date on it to make sure that it got. I mean,
okay.
So we would have a very clear expectation of when that was.
Okay, thank you
going
for
to
that
happen.
feedback.
I don't have an opinion on that. I just want to ask Mr. Dupler, can you explain a little bit on change of circumstances? If we ask for this, is it being directed to Judge Greer, and is it something that goes before him? I mean, I just don't.
It's to the court. Yeah, I mean that's my
Okay.
understanding, Mr.
And
Dupler,
does
that
he
it goes
consider
to the
things like
court.
that at any time? I just don't know enough about how this works.
Yes, I mean, thank you, Ms. Babb. We have discussed that briefly in other sessions, and yes, I mean, so a motion for a change in circumstance would go directly to Judge Greer. The plaintiffs would then have a chance to respond, and I think to Ms. Horn's point, I think the thing that she's looking at as well, and she can correct me if I'm wrong, is that, as the Omicron cases go down, I mean, at this point, it may be, somewhat speculative, although if you look at other models, probably not. But then, if you give it just a little bit more time, perhaps that model's even better. But again, she can correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's kind of what my question was. I mean, we could do it now, but if we give it another week, that could be even, there could be further proof that we're moving in the right direction.
I'd almost give to next Friday, because in the health department coming out with reports every Thursday. Mr. Myers might know that.
I think it's Wednesday.
Wednesday. When is health department coming out with reports? Is it every Wednesday now or every Thursday? On COVID cases? Okay.
Ms. Henderson? Oh, I'm sorry. Do you want me to go to Ms. Owen?
Ms. Owen.
But I'll support it either way.
Ms. Owen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was going to also suggest lower numbers, and the state is supposed to, supposed to is not the right word. The state has said that they publish numbers on Wednesday, but those numbers have not been updated. The most recent numbers that are actually there are the 5th. So that's all I have to look at right now. As of February 5th, it looks like the 7-day average was around 1,020 per day. January 29th, it was higher. It was 1,204. If we go all the way back to December 27th, where's that 29th? It would have been 143. So if we use Ms. Henderson's previous pre-Omicron, we would be looking at something below 102. However, this court order was put in place long pre-Omicron. So I would suggest using numbers from August and say that if they fell below those August numbers, and at that point we were looking at closer to somewhere around 130, 140 for a 7-day average. It's currently 1,020, but that's last week's number. And the weeks before that, let's see, January 29th, it was 1,200. So yes, it is falling, and we don't know what this week's number is.
Well, I think I know the number for Knox County, I believe, is down. It's right at 9,900, and last week around this time it was around 13,000, somewhere between 13 and 14,000. So it's dropped pretty dramatically in a week. I'm trying to pull up. I have.
Did I say? Yeah, I'm looking at Knox County cases.
Okay.
Yeah.
And. I thought a new number came out today.
It's supposed to be Wednesday, but they're not published yet, state or local.
Ms. Henderson.
I just wanted to add some clarification for that a little bit. So on September 1st, for children, it was 250 children with COVID, 16 kids on a Friday.
I would say that
cases are collapsing.
Based on, I think what Ms. Horn is asking is for a change of circumstance that the judge might actually consider. And I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Dupler, I believe part of his original consideration was community spread. So I think we might have to, for him to consider it, I think we would need to look at community spread as well for a change of circumstance.
I'd have to look back at it, but I would encourage this board to look at both circumstances. You know, I mean, obviously, if we want the best motion possible. Yeah.
So maybe we could say "and," so that he could look at both. So if they dropped below those beginning of school numbers for children and for community spread. Thank you.
Well, and if I may, I think part of the change of circumstance that I have in mind is also the mounting evidence that we have from all of the medical entities around the country and actually around the world. So I think that's kind of also part of my thinking is it's not just the numbers. I mean, I think we do have evidence that it's dropping, the case counts are dropping among children specifically. However, I think that the change of circumstance that I think, you know, also that needs to be considered is the change in science. I mean, everybody else talks about science evolves and science changes. We have studies from around the world with science. And so that's a lot, I understand that's a lot to go through. Because there are tons of reports and studies. And they are from, as we talked about earlier, they're from reputable doctors and hospitals. So I think that's part of it too. I'm not just talking, I think we may have 250 kids in our school system that have COVID or some sort of coronavirus forever. So that's not what I'm talking about necessarily. Sure, we can look at that, but I mean, the numbers that for kids in Knox County, it's dropping like a rock. So, and I'm not, once again, everybody can get a vaccine if they want to. I don't care about them. I'm talking about kids wearing masks. So we need to look at the fact that every time you turn on a news report or your computer to look at your email, there's a new study that states something new about what they know about masks. The CDC has even said that cloth masks do not work. So was the CDC referenced in this case? I believe it was.
It was. Thank you, Ms. Horn. So, I think, again, I mean, if this board's directing us to file a motion, we'll be happy to do so, but we'll want to use any evidence that's available to prove our point. I will point out that you have to be careful with the CDC because the CDC, has talked about N95s versus cloth masks, and they have made that distinction. But the last I checked, which was yesterday, they're still unfortunately saying that school children should be universally masked.
Well, I've never been a fan of going by the CDC guidance. That's been on record multiple times. So that's a great point. I definitely don't hang my hat on what they say. But there are many other studies that I've sent to the law department that can be referenced. So I do think the case counts are dropping. I think another week down the road, they're going to drop even further. So if the board is agreeable, then when I make this motion, I can make the motion that it be filed by the 18th. Is that next Friday? Friday, February 18th. So if everybody...
Ms. Henderson, did you have something else?
Oh, yes. I would just also like to go on record in the change of circumstance if we could include medical experts in that also, because like Ms. Horn was saying, the science is changing. And, I'd also like to say, again, the numbers on Friday for sick children were 16 out of 60,000 children. This is about kids. This isn't about the adults that are sick. It's not about cases. It's about hospitalization and death. That's the whole point of the vaccine, was to get the hospitalizations down, not to get the cases to zero and keep our kids in masks every time we're fearful of another variant.
Ms. Owen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. What I'm saying is that if you're taking the temperature of the room, I would not support anything that didn't look at community spread as well. And that's all.
Thank you.
Ms. Babb?
I can support next Friday because I think that if we follow the trends of the rest of the world, I think we are going to see big changes. But I think the number one circumstance change is the fact that our school children are eligible for a vaccination, which they were not eligible for when this original injunction went in place. And I think, to me, that really is a game changer, and that was what I kind of kept waiting for back when we were in August. And so, I think you've got the fact that anyone who wants to, it's not required, we're not requiring it, but anybody that wants to get their child a vaccination, they are eligible to do that. And then, as you said, we are seeing so many around the country changing their stances on it. So I can support this.
Who's next? Ms. Bounds?
It doesn't matter. Yeah, I hear what Ms. Owens is saying, and that was a part of Judge Greer's order, I guess, but I don't know how you can really consider community spread when Knox County is totally unmasked. His order should have masked the whole county up, not just the school children who are bearing the brunt of all of this. So while they are masked at school, they are not masked, any evening or the weekends. So I don't know. It just makes no sense to me.
Ms. Henderson?
I agree with Ms. Bounds. you know, we can't talk about community spread when no one is wearing a mask in our county, and our children are the only ones forced to. And I agree with Ms. Babb, while I am against mandated vaccines, all of our children have the ability to get a vaccine. And to me, that was always the end game of people who wanted to wear masks. The end game, I was told, was as soon as children are eligible to get vaccinated, we'll be fine with that. And the goalpost keeps moving, and enough is enough.
So I would like to make a motion to direct the law department.
Ms. Horn, may I
Yes.
just
Yes,
point
certainly.
So I would point one other thing out, as far as timing goes. If this board wants competent medical testimony to go along with the motion, in addition to figures and, reference material, then we will need a little bit more time, because you can't just have a doctor send a letter or a medical report. You have to be able to secure actual testimony from that doctor that's very specific to the task at hand. So if this board does want the medical testimony with the motion, I would suggest, I hate to say 30 days, but I would suggest at least 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay. So today is February 9th, tomorrow's the 10th. If we say Friday, how about if we say, how about Monday, February 28th? That's a little over 2 weeks. Okay. So the motion is to direct the law department to file a change of circumstance that reflects the fact that vaccines are available to everyone in our school buildings, that Omicron is less severe than other variants. There's proof of that in studies. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that during the motion, so that's not part of the motion, Terry. That mask mandates are being lifted all over the country, that one-way masking protects the wearer, and any other additional medical studies that can be cited to assist in the case.
Second.
And that be provided to the court no later than February 28th.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Horn and a second by Ms. Satterfield. Ms. Owen?
I can support that if the one-way masking section is out.
If there's,
If the one-way masking portion of that is not in the motion, I can support it.
hold on one second.
So can we have Ms. Coatney read that back to you while you're looking, because
Thank you.
I will try my best, Ms. Horn. To direct the law department to file a change of circumstance that references that vaccines are available to everyone in our buildings, that mask mandates are being lifted all over the country, and that mask protects the wearer, and any other information that could assist in the case by February the 28th.
So, Ms. Owen, in what Ms. Henderson has given us, there's documentation from a doctor at Harvard and also doctors from Tufts, did you say Boston Medical? Boston Medical, Harvard Medical School. I mean, it's multiple doctors in multiple places. So it's not just one person.
I understand that. There's also massive evidence to show that masking the community prevents community spread. So, pardon me, this is our meeting. So what I'm saying is that the one-way masking, if that is in the motion, I cannot support it. If it is not in the motion, I can. That's all.
Thank you.
So we have a,
Terry, would you mind reading the motion one more time?
Yes, ma'am. The motion is to direct the law department to file a change of circumstance that references that vaccines are available to everyone in our buildings, that mask mandates have been lifted all over the country, and that masks protect the wearer and any other information that could assist in the case by February the 28th.
so and we have so that motion by Ms. Horn and a second by Ms. Satterfield. Mr. McMillan?
Who's he supposed to file it with, the judge or who? Judge Greer? Okay.
Okay, so, Ms.
The only other thing I would add, I mean, again, is that we will follow, you know, the board's motion, should it pass, but we will have to search and actually use competent evidence. We can't use such things as newspaper articles. So, just so the board understands that.
Okay, so Ms. Coatney, do we want to do a roll call vote?
Ms. Satterfield?
Pass.
Ms. Owen?
No.
Mr. Watson has ended he signed off. And Ms. Babb?
Yes.
Ms. Horn?
Yes.
Ms. Henderson? Ms. Bounds? Mr. McMillan? Ms. Christie?
Yes.
That is 5 yes votes, 1 no vote, and 2 pass votes. Ms. Satterfield, would you like to change your pass vote?
No, ma'am.
Mr. McMillan? That's 5 yes, 1 no, and 2 pass.
So motion carries. We have more public forum.
All right, we have 2 more people for public forum. Caitlin Jones?
Oh, hold on just a minute.
Oh,
I'm sorry, Ms. Jones.
Sorry,
Ms.
I
Horn.
have another motion.
Ms. Horn has another motion. Hold on.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay, I would like to make a motion to ask Law Director Boot to appoint Houston Havasey to assist in this case, along with Amanda Morris.
Second.
Okay, so a motion by Ms. Horn, a second by Ms. Satterfield. Any discussion? Okay. So Ms. Coatney, do we want to do a roll call vote on
Can
that?
you restate the motion?
Will you restate it, Ms. Horn?
You want to restate it?
Or Ms. Coatney, can you restate it?
The motion was to ask Law Director David Boot to appoint Houston Havasey to assist Amanda Morris in this case.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
Just quick. I won't support this, not that I have any problem with him selecting somebody of his choosing, but he knows his department much better than we do, and people that he can use. So, anyway, I just want to explain that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dupler?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I guess I need to piggyback off what Mr. McMillan is saying. I mean, you know, there are reasons why certain attorneys are assigned to certain cases. I obviously have a pretty full workload, as is seen tonight, you know, managing this board. But, you know, well, you all are great. You all are great folks. I enjoy working with you. But I might suggest that maybe you make a motion that the law director, David Book, come up with, you know, another attorney who, I mean, you know, because Houston Havasey may or may not be available. I just don't know. But I mean, I'm just throwing that out there. Yeah.
Okay, I'll make an amended motion that, based on the comments, that we ask the director to appoint, and I can't remember how you said it, Gary, but an available someone else to assist Amanda Morris in this case.
Would you like to add Houston Havasey if he is available to that?
Yes, and with it being Houston Havasey if he is available. Thank you.
So are you okay with that, Ms.
Second.
Satterfield? Okay. So, Ms. Coatney, will you restate that and do a roll call vote for us?
The motion is to ask Law Director David Book to appoint another available attorney to assist Amanda Morse in this case, and it being Houston Havasey if available.
Yeah.
Ms. Satterfield?
Pass.
Ms. Owen?
No.
Mr. Watt, I'm sorry, Ms. Babb? Ms. Horn?
Yes.
Ms. Henderson? Ms. Bounds? Mr. McMillan? Ms. Christie?
Yes.
That's 4 yes votes, 1 no vote, and 3 pass votes. Ms. Satterfield, would you like to change your pass?
No, ma'am.
Ms. Babb?
Yes.
And Mr. McMillan? Would you like to change your pass? So that's 5 yes votes, 1 no vote, and 2 pass votes.
So motion carries. So, do we have any other motions anyone would like to make before we go to public forum? Ms. Satterfield?
All right, so we have Caitlin Jones. Caitlin Jones. If you can state your name, county of residence, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
My name's Caitlin, and I live in Knox County. I've stood in front of this board on multiple occasions regarding my son Alec and his treatment at AL Lots. Everyone here knows I was a loud voice during the discrimination of our kids with